Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're stepping into a moment in history that honestly feels less like a staid royal record and more like uh, a high-stakes thriller.
Definitely. Picture this. 472 H.K.C. inside the royal palace of Chrysalis, the heart of Daconia.
And the atmosphere isn't festive, not at all.
No, it's incredibly tense. You'd expect, celebration around a royal birth, but the sources, they paint a picture of just absolute fear. Paralyzing fear, really.
The whole kingdom is just waiting on one woman's labor.
Because the survival of Daconia itself is literally hanging in the balance.
Yeah, this isn't just about, oh, good and heir. This is about avoiding immediate, catastrophic war.
While also trying to keep powerful enemies outside the borders at bay.
So today we're diving into the sources around the succession crisis after King Gair IV's untimely death.
And our mission really is to unpack the intense, almost unbearable political pressure on Queen Regent Nimhryce.
We need to get why this single birth meant the difference between, well, stability and imminent civil war, a war that the kingdom probably couldn't survive.
And the clock was absolutely ticking. Gair IV had been dead for 9 months. That's a long time to leave a throne empty.
A kingdom without a king.
Yeah.
It just invites trouble, doesn't it?
Exactly. It was a dangerous vacuum.
Wow.
The late King Gair IV, he passed without a clear heir, which immediately threw open the door to some of the oldest, deepest political grudges in Daconia.
Okay, so if Nimhryce, the queen regent, if she doesn't deliver a male heir, who's next in line?
Well, that's the problem. It wasn't a simple choice. It guaranteed a descent straight into discord.
How so?
The succession would default to Gair IV's twin elder sisters.
Sure.
And here's the critical part. Those sisters were married into the rival, incredibly powerful houses of Tauphyn and Raquerle. The sources actually say the enmity between them was as ancient as the mountains of Kaela. So deep-rooted.
And that context is just crucial, isn't
Yeah.
it? These aren't just like squabbling relatives. They represent serious historical wounds.
Oh, absolutely. Was it just about land or reclaiming lost honor? It was both, really. But the honor part, that was the fuel. The immediate issue on paper was the northern duchy of Opheria.
Okay.
But the root of the conflict, that goes way back. The Tauphins, backing their claimant, Roland, they had been violently kicked out of their ancestral home in Echekwa back in 456 H.K.C.
16 years earlier. That's not that long ago in political memory.
Not at all. Still very fresh. That expulsion followed the fall of Taurian v. Perede and Queen Dionyse v. Tauphyn. So the Tauphins weren't just rivals. They were, in a way, exiles looking for restoration.
Any chance to regain power, especially the crown, would be a chance to avenge that humiliation.
Precisely. Meanwhile, the Raquerles, backing the younger boy, Raquerle, they were determined to keep their gains and make sure the Tauphins never got back into power.
So this historical grudge is the tinder. Okay, let's pivot to the woman holding the match, so to speak. Queen Regent Nimhryce. Her political burden seems amplified by her personal situation.
It really was. Queen Nimhryce was 27, from the noble house Perede. But her key political asset, her grandfather, Gair IV,
Right, Gair the Marshal.
the very same Duke and Marshal of the realm, controlled the vital southern lands Bethryce and Gair. That connection meant Nimhryce had the South's power behind her if she succeeded.
And here's where the stakes get, well, just unbelievably high. The sources are clear. This is her first childbirth.
Her marriage to Gair IV had been childless before he died.
And in a political climate, this desperate silence breeds suspicion, doesn't it?
And court whispers turned treacherous fast. Because the king had been dead 9 months, well, some courtiers dared to suggest the child wasn't actually the late king's.
Wow, the gravity of that accusation.
Immense. If she failed to produce a legitimate male heir, that claim of adultery would ruin her powerful family. The sources hint she'd face, the harshest penalties under Draconic law.
So the birth chamber isn't just a medical crisis zone. It's a legal and political battlefield.
Which is exactly why the big players, the lords of the three duchies, plus Nimhryce, the matriarch of Chrysalis, they had to hammer out a binding, very public agreement. They set up this ultimate political ultimatum, the Duke's decree.
Okay, let's unpack those two conditions, because they really show how desperate everyone was to avoid making a choice.
Condition A, the kingdom's lifeline. If Nimhryce had a son, he'd become king at 15. And crucially, Nimhryce herself would rule as queen in her own right until then.
Sparing the realm another regency, basically buying 15 years of stability.
They are literally betting 15 years on this one birth.
And condition B, the disaster scenario.
Condition B was the trigger, straight up war. If she had a daughter or no surviving son, the dukes had to choose between the two boys, 9-year-old Raquerle Raquerle or 15-year-old Roland Tauphyn.
And choosing either one guarantees conflict starts immediately.
Instantly.
Wow. Willing to wait 15 years just to dodge that immediate choice. That tells you how close they felt to the edge.
Absolutely. And for Nimhryce's grandfather, Gair the Marshal, defending her claim was more than just politics.
It was personal. Deeply personal.
Familial duty, exactly. If Nimhryce failed, got branded an adulteress, that stain falls on H.K.C. permanently. His power, his legacy, everything was tied to her delivering a legitimate boy.
This crisis really forced every major house in Daconia to show its hand, didn't it? Let's look at Deivis, the Duchess of Ephyria. The sources say she was in a total no-win situation.
Yeah, Deivis was caught between, well, a rock and a hard place. Two monsters, as you said. Her fears were very specific, very practical.
Okay, like what?
If Roland Tauphyn, the 15-year-old, took the throne, he'd immediately try to restore his house to a Chequa. That overturns years of settlements, reignites the old conflict. That was a certainty.
But backing the younger one, Raquerle Raquerle, wasn't much better.
Just different problems, equally dire. If Raquerle reigned, House Raquerle becomes so dominant. The southern houses, Chambras and Dorison, they'd almost certainly band together against Raquerle.
So, war either way, just different battle lines drawn.
Pretty much. The sources suggest she felt, damned if she backed the exile, damned if she empowered the dominant house. A terrible position.
Now, this is interesting, House Dorison, you mentioned them. They're described as being enriched by trade. How did that play in?
That's a fascinating detail from the sources, isn't it? The Dorisons were traders. And what stops trade?
Armies marching. War.
Exactly. Their profit motive was stability.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So they threw their support behind Nimhryce's claim if a son was born, because that was the only path to guaranteed peace, at least for a while.
A great example of economic interest trumping maybe older loyalties or alliances.
Definitely.
Oh.
Which brings us back to Gair the Marshal. We know he's Nimhryce's powerful grandfather, but the sources revealed this genuine conflict. He was also the legal guardian of Roland Tauphyn, the older rival claimant.
Oh, right. That's a huge conflict.
Massive internal conflict. Legally bound to Roland by duty, but family loyalty pulls him hard towards Nimhryce. He had to choose, save his bloodline or uphold his oath as guardian.
And the sources give us that line.
They do. The line is stark. Blood proved thicker than alliances. He chose his granddaughter. He resolved to stand by Nimhryce.
Knowing full well it would infuriate Roland's mother, Lady Bethryce.
Absolutely. But that decision basically solidified a powerful southern bloc ready to defend the Queen Regent.
And they needed that bloc because we can't forget the bigger picture. Daconia was externally weak at this point.
Extremely vulnerable. They only recently lost the Duchy of Qualis to the King of Leor.
And Leor wasn't done. Just 5 years before this birth, in 467 H.K.C., Chrysalis itself the capital, it had barely escaped falling to the Leoris.
Yeah, Daconia was bleeding externally, constantly fighting off Leor. And yet, inside the court, the only thing that mattered was the gender of this one unborn child.
They just couldn't afford a second front opening up internally between the rival houses.
No way. So the whole kingdom was just suspended. In this state of acute vulnerability, all eyes glued to the royal chambers.
The sources say the tension was unprecedented.
Never before, according to the records, had the palace halls in Chrysalis been so utterly fraught during a royal birth. Every servant, every guard, every lord, just counting the hours, waiting for news of peace or the signal for war.
And the delivery itself,
Yeah.
it wasn't easy. It wasn't quick.
Far from it. The sources are clear. It was perilous. The baby was turned wrong in the womb.
Oh, dear.
And to really understand the danger Nimhryce was in physically, politically, there's this one incredible, really visceral detail recorded.
What is it?
It says the red-stained cloths were exchanged for white no fewer than 20 times.
Wow. 20 times. That really brings the danger home. It wasn't theoretical. She was genuinely near death.
Which would have instantly meant Condition B, civil war.
The tension must have been unbearable. Hours ticking by, nearing midnight.
The entire court holding its breath, waiting not just for the gender, but did the mother even survive? Failure meant ruin for Chambras, war for Daconia.
And then finally, the wet nurse emerges. What was the news?
The sources describe this profound collective moment, just relief. The news came, the mother lived, and she had given birth to a son.
A son! Catastrophe averted in that single moment.
You can almost feel it in the writing. A collective great sigh of relief swept through the court, the city of Chrysalis, and all the kingdom of Daconia.
The crisis was over, but by chance, really.
Purely by the survival of one mother and the gender of her child, the conditional crown was secured. Nimhryce confirmed as queen regent in her own right for 15 years. Stability won for now.
But what really stands out to me, thinking about this, while the birth saved Daconia then, in 472, the fundamental problem, that political powder keg, the Tauphyn versus Raquerle enmity.
It hasn't gone away. Not at all. It's just been paused, put on hold.
Yeah, that's the crucial takeaway, isn't it?
Absolutely. The rival claimants, Raphael and Roland, they're still there, still powerful, still connected to the throne. And those deep historical grudges, like being kicked out of Echequa back in 456, they haven't been resolved. The clock is just counting down 15 years until the new king comes of age.
Which leaves a really important question for you, the listener, to think about. The dukes, the powerful lords, they were willing to wait 15 years for this boy king to grow up, just to avoid an immediate war rooted in stuff that happened decades before.
What does that choice really tell us about where power actually lies in Daconia?
Right. If the whole kingdom was so fragile that only the birth of one specific baby boy could stop it collapsing, was the conflict really averted? Or did they just buy themselves a 15-year timeout?
A time out until that new king, the product of this one incredibly perilous birth, turns 15. Because those underlying tensions still very much alive.
And if they were willing to gamble so much for 15 years of uneasy peace, what happens when that time runs out?
That's the question everyone in Chrysalis must have been asking themselves, even as they celebrated that birth.
A deeply unsettling thought for a kingdom that just dodged ruin. And that's where we'll leave our deep dive for today. Until next time, keep digging into the details.
Today we're cutting a path through the glittering, but frankly, deeply dangerous early life of Nimhryce of House Perede. This isn't just, a story of a noble childhood. It's really a dramatic deep dive into how forbidden texts, fierce ambition, and unbelievable political tragedy created a future queen.
Yeah.
We have sources here that give us this incredible, almost granular detail, down to the exact number of rooms in her castle.
It's amazing detail.
And then you juxtapose that with the cold, hard timeline of execution and succession.
It really is the ultimate collision of innocence and, well, realpolitik, isn't it? Nimhryce was a product of the Duchy of Bethryce and Gair down in southern Daconia.
Right.
Geographically, they were always a bit on edge, bounded by the River Vale, the Rook Mountains, neighbors like Voltaï. The central tension you really see here is how this child, who was naturally headstrong, adventurous, how she was systematically prepared for political life, only to be just utterly devastated by the reality of it.
Let's start with her parents then, Aubrois and Tauphyn, because their marriage itself, it was an early political kind of anomaly.
It was.
Lady Aubrois was initially set to marry Golion, one of King Gair III's sons, apparently quite cruel, but something shifted. How did Aubrois end up with Tauphyn, the kinder third son?
Well, it seems he was an intervention by King Gair III himself, and it looks like a critical political move, really rooted in character assessment. Golion was known to be cruel, difficult. The king clearly saw that a union between his unruly second son and Aubrois, a high-ranking duchess's daughter, would probably only create instability.
Okay.
So the marriage was, well, redirected to Tauphyn.
It sounds like the king chose peace over power, maybe, at least in that immediate moment.
Possibly. Or long-term stability, perhaps.
They secured a kinder partner for Aubrois, and the sources do say they were a happy couple. They eventually welcomed 5 children, including their cherished eldest son, Amer, and, of course, Nimhryce.
They did, yes. But this, happy, maybe gentler coupling, it was never meant for the throne. Tauphyn was the third son.
Right. Way down the line.
Exactly. For him to become heir, something really drastic had to happen to the 2 elder brothers. And the sources suggest a pretty devastating political purge cleared their path.
Okay, walk us through that tragedy. What happened to the elder sons of the king, Ionan and Golion, that suddenly propelled Tauphyn into the line of succession?
The sources are quite blunt, actually. They basically say they failed due to their defining characteristics.
How so?
Ionan, the eldest, the crown prince, was apparently too virtuous, maybe too naive, or incorruptible for the serpentine politics of the court.
Yeah.
And he perished for it. Likely a political trap disguised as, a downfall.
Wow. Okay. And Golion, the cruel one.
Golion, the cruel middle son, perished due to his vices. He succumbed to his own excesses, his unruliness. Just couldn't handle himself, it seems.
So the one who was too good and the one who was too bad both disappeared, leaving the measured, kinder third son, Tauphyn, as the unexpected heir, which meant Lady Aubroyce was now destined to become queen.
Precisely. It was a massive, bloody promotion for their house, really.
Yeah.
And it's into this volatile, high-stakes environment that Nimhryce arrived. She was born on the 5th day of the 7th month, year 444. That's the High King's calendar, of course.
Okay, 444. Was that significant? Was it seen as auspicious or maybe an ill omen?
Well, in retrospect, it certainly looks like a turning point, maybe a dark omen woven right into her birth.
Really?
That very same year, the king's own grandson, the one holding the royal namesake, was declared dead after a grave illness.
Oh, wow.
So Nimhryce was born at the exact moment the established royal lineage was taking this devastating blow. It just signals instability, a changing of the guard, right from her first breath.
That sets a powerful stage. And speaking of setting, let's talk about her physical surroundings. Her father, Tauphyn, was frequently away, waging war in Leor, you mentioned.
Oh.
So Nimhryce was raised primarily in Melisel. How did this immense castle shape her?
Melisel, yeah. It was built by Duke Roland Steelfist, and it was engineered for permanence, for defense. The sources detail its sheer scale. 13 soaring towers, 84 rooms.
84 rooms.
An absolutely staggering number. And beautiful, crystal-stained windows. For a child like Nimhryce, this wasn't just a home. It was like a limitless maze.
And you mentioned she was naturally adventurous. Did she really know all 84 rooms? Is that even possible?
The sources suggest absolutely. She didn't just live there, she explored it. Knew the secret passages, the dusty attics, the deep cellars.
Huh.
Her adventurous spirit was apparently so pronounced that her own grandfather, Duke Valcaire, actively tried to curb it by using fear.
Right, he tried to scare her with the old medieval boogeyman trick, didn't he? Tales of fearsome trolls lurking in the cellars and the woods nearby.
Exactly, and it completely backfired.
Oh, how so?
Instead of teaching caution, it basically gave her a map. She viewed these warnings not as deterrents, but as invitations, really.
Invitations.
Yeah, invitations to explore the most dangerous, the most hidden corners of the castle and the surrounding land. She was actively seeking out the mythology of the place,
But the core of her imagination, initially at least, was fed by more traditional means first. She was captivated by those standard noble tales of chivalry.
Yes, exactly. The acceptable curriculum, let's say, for a young noblewoman.
Yeah.
The tales of Lavaine, the saga of Paisifel of the Sapphire Armor, the epic of Lorraine and Vildice.
Right.
These were stories of clear-cut heroes, noble love, moral clarity. They reinforced the values of her class. Standard stuff.
And then, when she turned 11, a new kind of text entered the picture. And this is where the plot really thickens, right?
Definitely.
Where did these forbidden books come from?
They came from across the bridge, in the bustling city of Nimhryce, quite a major hub, nearly 10,000 people. A merchant arrived from Leor,
Okay.
and he was bringing in these bound books that had been copied and preserved by scribes who had, fallen from grace or maybe were forced into hardship.
So these weren't official court histories or anything approved. They were marginalized, perhaps subversive literature.
Precisely. They carried a certain danger just because they weren't approved. And Nimhryce, using her maidens as intermediaries, as go-betweens, secretly purchased these tomes.
Clever.
Well, she was already adept at keeping secrets and navigating hidden spaces, wasn't she? Thanks to all that castle exploring.
Good point. What were these forbidden books actually about? What made them so dangerous to a young noblewoman's education?
They focused explicitly on what the sources call seedy tales of love and desire, filled with the intense passions of men and women.
Okay. Not exactly the saga of Paisifel.
Not quite. And if you connect this to the bigger picture, Nimhryce was blossoming into womanhood right at a time of extreme political anxiety for her family. Her father's position was new, potentially fragile.
So these romantic, maybe even scandalous fantasies served as a kind of psychological escape.
An essential one, I'd argue. The world outside was dangerous, political, completely beyond her control. Her books offered a private world of emotional intensity that she could control.
Makes sense.
They fueled her imagination, sure, but they also provided a complete distraction from the fact that her father was the new heir, potentially facing enemies.
That distraction couldn't last, though, of course. King Gair III finally dies, and the instability they feared just erupts.
Yes.
Nimhryce's father, Tauphyn, is immediately challenged by Bethryce, the powerful widow of his deceased older brother, Ionin, the virtuous one.
Right. And this challenge wasn't just about a crown. It was really two powerful women, Taurian's wife Obrois and Ionan's widow Bethryce fighting for the future through their son.
A proxy war, almost.
In a way. The powerful lords of Voltae and Ophiria quickly declared their loyalty to Bethryce's son, who was then said to be crowned Gair IV. The trap was sprung for Taurian.
And the end came shockingly fast. In early 456 H.K.C., Nimhryce, who would have been about 12 then, her world was absolutely demolished.
Demolished is the right word. Her father, Taurian, and her beloved eldest brother, Amer, executed on the executioner's block in Chrysalis.
Both of them.
Both of them, the male line of House Tauphyn, violently extinguished. And Taurian's mother, the former Queen Dianis, was also put to death.
His mother, too. Why?
Cleaning house? Removing any potential rallying point or lingering claim, it was swift, brutal, and complete. An erasure of their claim.
It's just hard to imagine that level of devastation, to wake up one day and half your immediate family is executed by the very people you are now somehow expected to serve.
Yeah.
How did a 12-year-old child process that brutal reality?
She didn't. Really, the sources show she just withdrew completely. She couldn't comprehend the political violence, it seems, so she retreated into the only world that offered any solace,
Right.
the romantic fantasy of her forbidden books.
Right.
She even feigned illness, what the sources called strange fevers.
Ah, the fevers.
Yes, to avoid the rigorous education that was surely meant to prepare her for some future political role they still hoped she might have.
That psychological retreat is fascinating. She essentially created a physical sickness to justify her emotional escape. The sources even suggest some people blame these books for causing her fevers, viewing the literature itself as a kind of moral illness.
Exactly. And that retreat, understandable as it was, only intensified the danger for her family, for her mother. She was losing time, losing focus, while her mother, Obrois, was fighting for their very survival.
A desperate situation for Obrois.
Desperate. Obrois knew that the only way to avoid complete political ruin was to somehow connect her daughter back into the royal line. Even that royal line.
Which brings us to that incredibly dramatic confrontation. This fantasy world she had built was literally shattered one day when her mother walked into her room unannounced, demanding she try on a wedding gown.
A brutal wake-up call. You could just picture it. The silken lace of that wedding dress, representing the ultimate betrayal of all her romantic ideals, everything she'd been reading about. And as Obrois pushed this devastating political reality onto her daughter, she discovered the very things that were sheltering Nimhryce. Forbidden books.
And Obrois's reaction wasn't just a telling off, it was physical destruction. She gathered every single one of those tomes and had a bonfire in the castle courtyard, burned them all.
That bonfire, I think, wasn't just a mother punishing a daughter, it was a political act of sheer desperation.
How so?
Obrois must have feared those corrupting influences, as she saw them, would make Nimhryce weak or morally compromised somehow, incapable of performing her high-stakes duty. And that duty was, well, terrifying.
Because Nimhryce was being forced to marry King Gair IV.
Yes.
The young king whose own mother, Bethryce, was directly responsible for the execution of Nimhryce's father and brother.
Exactly. Nimhryce was destined to become queen through a forced political alliance. A marriage built literally on blood, vengeance, and the need for stability. Not the glorious, passionate desire she'd been reading about in the tales of Lavain.
Her fantasy was incinerated, literally, by the harsh reality she was now compelled to embrace.
Completely.
So the girl who knew every secret room and hidden passage of Melisel, who dreamed of sapphire armor and chivalry, she's forced onto the political chessboard of Daconia, married to the son of her family's executioner. It's just an overwhelming betrayal of everything she valued.
It is the ultimate tragedy, in a way. She used these romantic tales as a psychological shield, didn't she? A way to cope with overwhelming grief and political instability. But that shield was violently stripped away right when she needed it most. Her life was about to become far less romantic, far more brutal than anything she had ever read. And she had no choice but to face the man, the family, responsible for her deepest pain.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What happens to a person when the fantasy that sheltered them is literally burned away by the hard reality they must now face? Does Nimhryce carry that desire for chivalry, for something more, into her queenship? Or does the vengeance of her mother and the brutality of her forced marriage just define her reign entirely? That's the question she must have carried with her, walking into that forced wedding. What kind of queen will she become?
A chilling thought to leave on. What parts of the girl survived? Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in on a pretty intense period, the regency of Bethryce.
That's right, roughly 459 to 468 H.K.C. A really tumultuous decade.
And we're using this fantastic source in an excerpt from Nimhryce III, the regency of Bethryce, to try and understand, well, Queen Nimhryce herself.
Yeah, how her personal despair kind of collided with all this political turmoil.
And how it forged her into this incredibly complex figure in the Tarosi kingdoms.
Exactly. Our mission here isn't just, listing dates. We want to get into the sheer drama.
Right.
Because this isn't just about a royal marriage. It's about a young woman's hopes just completely collapsing almost immediately.
And all set against this backdrop of the regent's really strict rule and this massive conflict, the war in Loire.
We're looking for those turning points, where personal weakness maybe became political strength or, well, the other way around.
And this source, it gives us a pretty raw look, doesn't it?
It really does. It tracks Nimhryce from, being this hopeful young bride
to basically a desperate captive.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
those clashes with the regent just keep ramping up.
Right up until the event that, well, blew the whole Regency Council apart. Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Starting with that initial hope versus the harsh reality she faced.
Well, that disappointment, it hits almost the second she gets off the boat in 459 HKC. She travels from Melisel, expecting this grand life in Chrysalis.
And the source mentions the sites, the architecture.
Oh, yeah. It emphasizes the Basilica of Sage Laurent, the royal palace.
Huh.
This mix of white stone and these red Voltaine bricks, it's meant to symbolize, the union of East and West.
A grand union she probably expected in her marriage, too.
Precisely. But instead, she gets King Gair IV.
Ah, yes, King Gair. The source says she'd been warned, but the reality was worse.
Much worse. Apparently, his considerable size was only matched by his, profound lack of energy. Lethargy is the word used.
And the wedding itself. Not exactly the grand affair she might have pictured.
No, not at all. It happened just a week after she arrived, second day of the 9th month, 459 HKC. And it was deliberately modest.
Deliberately? Whose decision was that?
That was Regent Bethryce. It fits perfectly with her style, very frugal, very pious.
Okay, that makes sense for the regent.
But what's really interesting is Nimhryce's own mother, Bethryce, she actually supported the decision.
Really? Why?
Well, the thinking, it seems, was that maybe a less ostentatious start might encourage some genuine connection between the couple. Intimacy.
A plan which seems to have failed rather spectacularly.
Completely. The source is very clear. Nimhryce was instantly disillusioned. The king didn't even share her rooms.
So she was still living with her mother, even after getting married.
Yes, with Bethryce. And this initial disappointment, it just festers. It turns into this deep despair and then outright hatred.
Hatred for who? Just the king?
For King Gair, yes, but also for Regent Bethryce, and eventually even for her own mother, Bethryce.
Wow. That's quite the emotional spiral.
And it really sets the tone for the whole regency. Now, Bethryce sees this petulance from the young queen, and she reacts how you might expect.
With discipline.
With iron discipline. Her whole rule was focused on, piety, frugality, virtue. And she had this specific requirement for noble women.
Ah, the charity work.
Exactly. Mandated charity. They had to go aid widows at the shelter of Sage Veara every fourth night.
Which was meant to instill humility, I suppose. Keep the nobility grounded.
That was the idea. But for Nimhryce, it wasn't seen as a lesson. It was seen as a direct personal insult.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because she didn't just, grumble about it.
Oh, no, not at all. She actively sabotaged the whole thing. The source calls it making a mockery of a sacred task.
Sabotaged? How?
Well, the text says she was taunting the children at the shelter, speaking ill of the destitute, basically complaining about having to help the poor.
Oh, my.
And just constantly boasting about her own wealth, her status. It was appalling behavior.
It must have gone down terribly with Bethryce and her mother.
Terribly. It shocked them both. It showed this deep contempt. It wasn't just being young and spoiled. It was a public attack on the very values Bethryce was trying to uphold.
So punishment was inevitable.
Oh, yes. Her first major punishment. Confinement. A whole year stuck inside the royal palace.
A full year.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Apparently you could hear her.
Cursing the place down. Yeah, the source mentions her bitter curses echoing through the halls.
But did locking her up curb the spending habits?
Not one bit. Even stuck inside, she somehow managed to blow through her allowance on, exotic goods, frivolous trinkets from the markets.
How did she even manage that if she was confined?
Emissaries, presumably. But worse than just spending her allowance, she started borrowing money.
Borrowing? From who?
Market vendors, merchants, promising repayment directly from the royal treasury.
Ooh, that's a huge overstep, undermining the region's financial control.
Precisely. It was a direct challenge. So Obrois, her mother, who had actually taken on the role of treasurer by this point.
Ah, interesting dynamic there. Mother as treasurer trying to control her daughter's spending.
Exactly. Obrois had to step in forcefully. She returned all the unpaid items Nimhryce had acquired.
Okay.
And then banned her from any more market visits. Cut off the supply line, so to speak.
But Nimhryce didn't just accept that, did she?
No. She escalated. Turned to bribery, trying to get palace staff on her side, even sending emissaries to try and, well, pilfer funds from the treasury itself.
Pilfer, so basically trying to steal from the crown.
That's what it sounds like. It forced Obrois's hand again.
Another confinement.
Yes, but this time much stricter, and crucially, she was put under the watch of a specific guard.
This is Sir Perede Vaisilier.
That's the one. A knight just back from the wars in Lior. A hardened combat veteran.
Just think about that. They needed a soldier, someone used to the battlefield, essentially to babysit the queen.
It speaks volumes, doesn't it, about how unmanageable she'd become. The sheer volatility.
It really does,
Yeah.
and it sets up this central irony almost. The conflict inside the palace is so bad they need military supervision,
Right.
but it's the external military threat, the actual war, that's about to give Nimhryce something punishment never could.
Purpose, exactly. And credit where it's due, Regent Bethryce shows a bit of strategic thinking here.
How so?
Well, Nimhryce is still confined. She's making herself ill, fasting in protest again. Instead of just more punishment, Bethryce tries a different tack.
Okay.
She actually tries to comfort her, show some patience. And she uses the kingdom's problems, the war in Lior, the Daconian forces being pushed back by this general Raquerle Lucert, as a reason for Nimhryce to sort of pull herself together.
The kingdom needs you to be strong, that kind of thing.
Pretty much. Rise above your personal sorrows for the good of the realm. And then, the masterstroke. She invites Nimhryce to the armory.
Where the generals are meeting,
Oh,
the war council.
Exactly. And something clicks for Nimhryce. What starts as maybe just curiosity that turns into a real interest, an obsession almost.
She starts going regularly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Immersing herself in strategy, logistics, the affairs of the realm. And the source is explicit here. Her lifelong melancholy lifted. She found a strange joy in it all.
Wow. So the war, the crisis, actually gave her focus, a way out of her own misery.
It seems so. It suggests that, maybe purpose, not punishment, was what she needed all along. The system only knew how to confine her, but the national crisis knew how to engage her intellect, her energy.
But this newfound stability, this strange joy, it doesn't last, does it?
No. And guess who throws a wrench in the works?
Let me guess. Her mother, Obrois.
Bingo. Obrois gets worried. The source says she feared Sir Perede the Knight guarding Nimhryce, remember, had become too dear to her daughter.
Too dear, meaning an inappropriate attachment, romantically, or just too influential.
The source doesn't spell it out. It could be genuine eternal worry about a crush, or it could be political. Maybe Obrois felt Perede was giving Nimhryce too much sway, too much connection to the military minds.
Either way, she hasn't replaced.
Abruptly. And the effect on Nimhryce is immediate and, frankly, catastrophic.
She reverts back to the petulant.
Instantly. Back to childish defiance, refusing food again. Just completely falls apart.
And the timing is just awful, isn't it? Because this is happening right when things are really falling apart elsewhere.
Tragically ironic, yes. Because right around this time, the losses start piling up, personally and nationally. Obrois's own health fails. She dies in 466 H.K.C.
So Nimhryce loses her mother right after this Perede incident.
Yes. And at the same time, the Duchy of Qualis falls to the enemy in the war. And an entire noble family, House Drain, is wiped out.
So the queen is, starving herself over a night while her mother dies, and the kingdom is literally crumbling.
That's the picture the source paints. It's bleak.
And that war, the one that briefly gave her purpose, it's now coming right to their doorstep, isn't it?
Literally. The years 466 to 467 H.K.C. are dominated by the siege of Chrysalis itself.
The enemy at the gates. Who was attacking?
It was the mercenary fleet of the Ildvaldi, a gift, apparently, from the High King of Othrante to the Liori. They sailed right up the Vale River.
The city must have been in panic. Refugees.
Flooding in, yes. And the fear level just skyrockets when the nearby fortress of Silis falls.
How did that happen?
Treachery. which immediately sparked fears that the Liori now had inside information, maybe secret defensive plans for Chrysalis itself.
Okay, paranoia must have been rampant.
Absolutely. And this is where we see Nimhryce's grandfather, Gair, really take charge. He steps into the vacuum, overseeing the city's defense.
And Nimhryce, is she still interested in strategy now that the danger is real?
Apparently so. She asks Gair to see the defensive blueprints for Chrysalis.
And he shows her, given her previous interest.
No. He flatly refuses. Orders all those drawings hidden away immediately.
Why?
His reasoning, according to the source, was stark. That knowledge had become a liability. If she knew the plans, and if she somehow fell into enemy hands, or if there was another traitor, it was too risky.
Wow, that shows you the level of fear. Knowledge itself was dangerous.
Exactly. The whole atmosphere was just incredibly tense, high stakes.
But Chrysalis holds, right? The city isn't taken.
It holds. They repel the Liori in 467 H.K.C. The source credits Bethryce's diplomacy, maybe securing aid or ensuring loyalty, and the sheer bravery of the Daconian defenders.
So, a victory. But at a cost.
A huge cost. Daconia is now basically isolated. They're right next door to this vast, hostile Liori empire that just tried to sack their capital, and internally, Regent Bethryce's power is seriously waning.
Why was her power fading? Just the stress of the siege?
Partly, maybe, but you also have to remember who's died during her regency. Key allies.
Right, you mentioned Obrois. Who else?
Matriarch Nimhryce, a major religious figure, died back in 461. Courtier Dormizon, another influential noble, in 465. Then Obrois in 466. Her whole support structure, the old guard, it's just gone.
Leaving her vulnerable.
Very. And this isolation, this vulnerability, it seems to lead her to make a pretty desperate political gamble.
Which is?
An alliance with the Gwenandoran of the West.
The Gwenandoran. Why was that risky?
Because their customs, their whole way of life, were completely foreign, even alien to the Tarosi kingdoms, especially to the conservative religious hierarchy.
So reaching out to them alienated her own power base.
Severely weakened her position, yes. It was a move born of desperation, and it backfired by making her look out of touch, maybe even unorthodox.
And Nimhryce. She must have sensed this weakness.
Oh, you can bet she did. And the tension between them finally boils over with Bethryce's most radical suggestion yet.
Which is?
Don't tell me.
Divorce. Bethryce proposes that Nimhryce should divorce King Gair IV.
On what grounds?
Obvious ones, really. No heirs after all these years and clearly zero affection between them. It was a loveless, childless marriage.
Okay, but what was Bethryce's angle? Why suggest divorce now?
Well, the rumor, the strong suspicion, was that Bethryce wanted Gair free so he could marry a Gwenandoran princess.
To cement that controversial alliance she needed so badly. Exactly. Secure the alliance, keep Gair on the throne, but still under her control via a new, probably more pliable foreign queen. Nimhryce would be sidelined.
So how does Nimhryce react to this plan to basically replace her?
She refuses. Absolutely, categorically refuses.
This isn't the petulant girl anymore, is it?
Not at all. This is a calculated political move. She secludes herself, not in a tantrum, but strategically, and she makes this vow. She will bear the king a son, directly defying Bethryce, challenging the unspoken implication that maybe she couldn't.
So it's a direct confrontation.
Yeah.
Queen versus regent playing for the highest stakes.
It is. But this political standoff, it doesn't actually play out for long.
Why not?
Because in the second last month of 468 H.K.C., the whole chessboard is just upended, abruptly.
How?
Bethryce is found dead.
Dead. How?
Having fallen from a window in the royal palace.
Fallen. Or pushed. The source doesn't say.
It just says fallen. Make of that what you will, but the effect is instantaneous.
Regency Council collapses.
Dissolves immediately. With the regent gone, King Gair IV officially assumes the throne in his own right. No more regency.
So Nimhryce wins. She stays queen.
She stays queen. But the source adds a crucial detail. The true power, the actual authority behind the throne. It now rests with Gair.
Her grandfather, the one who took charge during the siege.
The very same. So Gair might be king, but Gair is pulling the strings.
Fascinating. Such a neat, if grim, end to that power struggle. Okay, if we connect this to the bigger picture, what does this whole decade tell us?
Well, I think the source gives us a kind of template for political survival, maybe. Nimhryce's journey is really striking. It shows how a massive national crisis, the siege, paradoxically gave her a way out of her personal crisis.
Right, it offered her purpose, a role, a stake in the realm, when nothing else seemed to work.
And look how quickly she transforms, relatively speaking. She goes from, bribing guards to buy trinkets.
To being this determined political operator defending her position against the divorce plot.
In less than 10 years. First motivated by the war council, the strategy, then by pure self-preservation against Bethryce. Maybe even driven by that attachment to Sir Perede, however brief.
And the end is just full of ambiguity, isn't it? Bethryce's death, a fall from a window.
Exactly. It happens right when her power is at its absolute weakest, right after she makes this incredibly risky move with the divorce suggestion.
And right when her main opposition, Nimhryce's family, specifically Gair, is consolidating influence.
It's convenient. The timing dissolves the old power structure instantly.
It definitely raises an eyebrow, as you say.
Yeah.
But the account doesn't end with Nimhryce triumphant, taking power herself.
No, that's the final twist. The power doesn't pass to the queen, whose rival just conveniently died. It passes to her grandfather, Gair, working behind the scenes with the still lethargic King Gair.
So what does this all mean? After all that, the confinements, the despair, the war, the brief flicker of purpose, the political maneuvering, was Nimhryce actually in control of her destiny?
Or was she, perhaps, still just a piece on the board? Moved and positioned by powerful men, the regent, the king, her own grandfather, who were playing a much larger game around her.
A sobering thought. Was the wheel of fate turning for her, or just for them? Something for you to ponder as you continue your own deep dives.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we are jumping into a really intense 3-year period. We're talking 471 to 474 H.K.C.
Right, and it centers on Queen Nimhryce of Daconia. She's just gotten her freedom back after being sort of confined during her mother-in-law's regency.
But freedom comes at a cost, right? Her husband, King Gair IV, dies literally as this happens, throwing the kingdom into, chaos.
Exactly. Immediate crisis. And that date, 471 H.K.C., that's the honored king's calendar. It tells us we're in a pretty modern but politically shaky time. Lots of fractures, economically too.
Yeah, so our mission today is to look at how Nimhryce's own life, which was, let's be honest, complicated, especially with all the rumors about her guard, Sir Perede. How did that personal drama mix with the huge political negotiations needed to stop the Liori Empire from just crushing them?
And the backdrop is key. Chrysalis, the capital, is not a happy place. You've got these Gwenandoran warriors there for protection, which they desperately need against the Liori. But a lot of the locals see them as, pagans. So there's tension. And worse, the Liori blockade means no trade, no silks, no pearls. Things the queen herself really missed, according to the sources.
Right, she lamented that specifically. So the kingdom's jumpy, broke, and relying on allies who make half the people nervous.
It's a powder keg.
Okay, so let's dive into Nimhryce herself. She's free, she's maybe mourning, maybe not, her large husband, King Gair. And the sources give us some clues about where her head was at, right?
They really do. She's looking for comfort. With luxury goods cut off, she starts hitting the bookshops, the antiquaries.
Looking for old books, like Queen Dionysia's.
Yeah, prestigious stuff like that. But the detail that jumps out is her specific taste. The sources say she really wanted books with, and I quote, vivid descriptions of the intimate escapades between knights and maidens.
Ah, okay. Which brings us neatly to Sir Perede and Vasilier, her personal guard, always there.
Always. And he fits the description, doesn't he? Tall, slender, dark hair, fair skin. Basically, he looked like the heroes in those romance novels she was reading.
It's like she cast him in the role.
You could almost say that. And remember, he was appointed by her mother, Aubroyce, to protect her during that earlier confinement. So he's been this constant presence.
And he wasn't local nobility, was he? He was an outsider.
Exactly. From Roby, Western Lior, born way back in 440 H.K.C., fought in some pretty serious conflicts, the Nimhryce Wars.
So, a veteran?
A seasoned warrior, yeah. He came to Chrysalis basically as a refugee after the Western Arcanate, that big Daconia-led power block collapse under Liori pressure.
Yeah.
So he's this skilled, displaced fighter, given the job of guarding the queen by her very strategic mother.
Okay, now the timeline gets explosive. King Gair V dies, however 471 HK.
Oh, boy. But the kicker, the queen's pregnancy was announced a week before he died.
Oh, boy. You can just imagine the court whispers.
Exploded. Instantly. Everyone's thinking, okay, the timing is interesting. And the obvious candidate for the real father, Perede, the handsome guard who's always with her.
A massive potential scandal, but they needed an heir.
Desperately. So the baby, a boy, is born. Pervani 22, 472 H.K.C. They name him Amer after Nimhryce's deceased brother.
So the succession line is secure, technically, but now there's the constitutional question. How does she rule?
Right. Does she rule as regent for the baby Amor until he's of age in 487? Or does she take the throne herself as queen regnant?
And she chose to rule as queen.
She did. And she had powerful backing, crucially from her grandfather, Marshal Raquerle.
Why was that distinction so vital right then? Monarch versus regent. Sounds technical, but you're saying it was about survival.
It was everything. Raquerle's argument was blunt. Look, we're facing an existential threat from Lior. We need someone who can make decisions about war, peace, diplomacy, now with absolute authority.
Not bogged down by a council.
Exactly. A regency, under their laws, often needed council sign-off for big moves like giving up land or declaring war. That meant delays, projecting weakness. Nimhryce ruling as queen, that centralized power. It showed Reuter they were dealing with a sovereign, not a committee.
And they found precedents.
Oh, yeah. Duchess Divas Raquerle brought up things like the old rule of the three queens. Queen Diana is the first. Historical examples to say, look, this is legitimate. We can do this.
So Nimhryce secures the throne, kind of under a cloud of gossip, but with the authority she needs. But the city itself, Chrysalis, is struggling. You mentioned she wasn't a fan of local customs.
No, she preferred the fancy Oxford language, the theaters. Meanwhile, Raquerle has the city locked down tight, terrified of Liori spies getting in.
And the Lioris aren't just sitting offshore, are they? They're actively hurting the city.
Actively. 300 Liori galleys controlling Silis. That's the island fortress guarding the rivers, the economic lifeline.
Wow, 300.
Yeah. They're charging massive tolls. They're literally sailing up and cutting the fishing nets of Chrysalis fishermen, forcing the city to pay tribute just to get basic food supplies.
So the pressure inside the city must be immense. The merchants, especially.
The Amintiniari merchants, yeah. Their whole livelihood depended on that block trade. They're looking straight at Nimhryce, basically saying, make peace, whatever it takes.
Okay, so the stage is set for negotiation. And who carries the message?
None other than Perede and Vassilier, the rumored lover, now acting as chief diplomat. He returns from Rulak in Qualis, summer of 472 H.K.C., with a personal letter from the Liori king himself, Royshar Veluser.
The big moment. What's Royshar offering, and what's the price? This letter gets read out loud to the royal council. Let's start with the honey, the nice bits.
Oh, the honey was laid on thick. Lots of sympathy for King Gair's death, addressing Nimhryce as most noble and radiant Queen Nimhryce, dear daughter.
Oh, dear daughter, that's patronizing.
It's totally a power play, right? Calling her daughter implies he's the father figure, the superior, but it's wrapped up in talk of ancient friendship and rekindling ties. Very smooth.
Okay, so that's the sweet talk. Now the poison. What did he actually demand to lift the blockade and give back Silas?
The demands were brutal, strategically brilliant. First, get rid of the accursed Gwenandoran warriors. He called them pagans defiling the soil.
But they were Daconia's main defense against him.
Exactly. Removing them leaves Daconia wide open. It's strategic disarmament, step one.
In step 2.
Targeted internal division. He demanded the conversion or expulsion of everyone in Ryden who followed the horned god Varolus.
Why them specifically?
Because the Redni were known as the kingdom's fiercest warriors, totally loyal to the Daconian crown. So Reuter's using religion as a weapon to force Nimhryce to alienate her best internal troops.
Wow, so it's not just about land. He wants her to dismantle her entire military structure, allies, and loyal subjects, using religion as the excuse. And only then does he offer back Celis and the Duchy of Qualis.
Precisely. It's an offer designed to look generous while gutting the kingdom completely.
This is where Marshal Raquerle steps up again, I assume. What was his take?
His reaction was immediate and sharp. He basically told the council, this letter looks sweet, it's full of diplomatic honey, but it's laced with poison. He saw right through it.
He knew accepting meant becoming a vassal state.
Absolutely. He warned them. Accept these terms, and Queen Nimhryce becomes Reuter's puppet, even if they get Qualis and Silas back on paper. It's subjugation disguised as peace.
And he must have pushed back hard on ditching the Gundorn and the Rudney.
He called it sheer folly. He stressed, these are our best fighters, our most loyal allies and subjects. Forsake them, and we are utterly alone and defenseless. Reuter could then just walk in whenever he felt like it.
But the city's starving, the merchants are screaming for peace. Just saying no or let's fight seems risky too. What was Valkyria's alternative?
That's the clever part. He knew they couldn't win a war right then, and they couldn't accept the poisoned peace. So his advice was, prepare for war, but don't start it. Play for time.
Stall.
Stall. Strengthen the defenses, keep the negotiations going, but drag your feet. Buy time. He was basically betting that they could get strong enough. Or maybe something would happen to Raquerle. It was a gamble on time and, frankly, on mortality.
And Nimhryce went with it. What did they actually do?
She followed his playbook perfectly, ordered new armies raised immediately, massive push to fortify Chrysalis and other key cities.
And wasn't there something about a chain?
Yes. A huge defensive measure. They literally stretched a massive chain across the river Vale below Chrysalis. The idea was to physically block any Liori galleys from sailing right up to the capital. An enormous undertaking.
Okay, so military prep is underway. How does she handle the diplomacy, the stalling part? She couldn't just ignore Raquerle's letter.
No, she replied very carefully. She didn't say no outright to his demands. That would provoke him. Instead, she expressed a willingness to discuss converting the Ridney eventually, and a gradual withdrawal of the Gwenendorn, perhaps.
Sounds cooperative, but isn't.
Exactly. It sounds like she's engaging. But then she added a condition. Raquerle had to show his good faith first by handing back Silas now as a token.
Which he'd never do without getting his demands met first.
Precisely. So she wasn't really negotiating for peace. She was negotiating for more time to prepare for the war she expected was coming.
So this diplomatic dance, this buying time, it goes on through 472 into 473 H.K.C. But the fear must have still been palpable.
Oh, completely. The queen and her court didn't stay in Chrysalis. They moved to the heavily fortified city of Cressmere. They were genuinely expecting a full-on Liori invasion at any moment. They'd built the defenses, raised troops, drawn the chain. Now they just waited.
The calm before the storm.
Except the storm clouds just lingered. The letters stopped. Silence from the Liori front. The tension must have been unbearable. They're braced for impact.
And then
news arrives. King Raquerle of Lucert is dead.
Just dead.
Dead. Natural causes, presumably. Those sources rarely specify. But the effect was instantaneous.
The main threat, the guy holding this massive empire together, is gone. What happened in Lior?
Chaos. Absolute chaos.
Yep.
Raquerle's huge empire didn't have a smooth succession plan, or maybe it just didn't matter. It immediately shattered.
Shatter how?
It broke into 9 separate warring factions. Lior plunged headfirst into a massive civil war that would actually go on for decades.
Wow. So the existential threat to Daconia just vanished overnight.
Poof. Gone. Valkyrie's gamble on time paid off in the most unexpected way possible. History intervened.
So by 474 H.K.C., the immediate danger is over. Did Valkyrie say, okay, Lior's fighting itself, let's go grab Qualis and Silas back?
He was more cautious than that. His assessment was, okay, Qualis, the duchy on the mainland, yes, with our Gwenendorn allies still here, we can probably take that back.
But Silas was different.
Silas, the island fortress, was a naval problem. And Valkyrie was realistic. He pointed out, we have 16 galleys. 16. To take a major island fortress defended by potentially hundreds of ships, even if they're disorganized, you need a fleet far greater, he said. They survived, but they didn't have the power projection, especially at sea, to fully capitalize.
Right, and around this time, the Gwenendorn allies start to leave.
Yeah, with the main Liori threat imploding, High Queen Lachlan recalled her troops in 474 H.K.C. The emergency was over.
But there's that interesting footnote about prisoners, isn't there?
Yes, it's fascinating. When the Gwenendorn left, they took Daconian prisoners of war with them, men captured earlier, likely during the Battle of Chrysalis.
Okay.
And these Daconian prisoners apparently integrated into Gwenendorn society. And crucially, they shared their skills, shipbuilding, other crafts. It was this forced knowledge transfer, Daconian expertise heading north with the departing allies.
Huh. An unintended consequence of the alliance.
Definitely. Meanwhile, Valkyrie, ever the pragmatist, didn't just relax. He kept preparing, kept building defenses.
Why? The threat was gone.
The immediate threat from a unified Lior was gone. But Lioris, even fractured Lioris, still held Qualis and Silas right on their doorstep. He knew the conflict wasn't over, just paused.
So Nimhryce, guided by Valkyrie, essentially weathered the storm, not by winning a fight, but by playing for time, managing the scandal, consolidating her power, and getting, well, lucky with Raquerle's timing.
A masterful display of strategic delay, turning personal crisis into political strength, and letting the enemy's internal weakness become her shield.
It really is an incredible story from those 3 years. Romance novels, court gossip, river chains, and imperial collapse all weaving together. Okay, so we mentioned those Daconian prisoners taken by the Gwenendorn, sharing shipbuilding knowledge. That leads us to a final thought for you. If Daconia gave away shipbuilding secrets because their prisoners were taken north, at a time when Daconia itself desperately lacked a strong fleet needed to retake Silas, what does that forced tech transfer mean long term? Could that knowledge, now embedded with their former allies, somehow cycle back or influence Daconia's own naval future when they eventually do need to challenge for Silas again? Something to think about. We'll leave you with that. Empires fall, leaving vacuums, and historically those vacuums are always filled by the most ambitious, the most ruthless, and often the least expected people. Today, we are deep diving into the unbelievably turbulent period right after the collapse of Roicher Lucert's Empire of Lior in 473 H.K.C.
That event didn't just create chaos, it created instant violent opportunity. Our sources today are drawn from a critical historical chronicle that focuses on two military dynamos who emerged from the ruins. On one side, you have the shrewd, brutal political operator, Prince Admiral Gair IV of West Lior.
Right.
On the other, the young, intensely focused Daconian knight, Roland Tauphyn. Our mission is to chart their collision during the defining conflict of that era, the Quolian War of 476 H.K.C.
Our mission is to tear through the political maneuvering, the shocking personal details, and the inventive military tactics that shaped not just the immediate future of Lior, but the trajectory of Daconia as well. We really have to figure out how these two men managed to rewrite the map in just, 3 years?
And to do that, you have to understand the nature of the power vacuum itself. When Roicher's unified empire dissolved in 473 H.K.C., power didn't revert to the established noble houses. Roicher had already largely wiped them out.
Okay, right.
Instead, the sources tell us power shifted violently to warlords and captains, men of humble origins, who often hailed from the untamed southern highlands. This was a complete inversion of the old order.
So we're looking at a brand new political landscape where legitimacy matters less than, decisiveness. And leading that charge is Gair IV, the Prince Admiral. What was his first, most aggressive move right out of the gate?
It was pure speed and audacity. Gair was a commander of the Western Fleet who, interestingly, spoke an ancient Sulazi dialect. In 473 H.K.C., he immediately seized the strategic island of Silas. But he didn't stop there.
No.
He sailed 100 ships up the massive Jane River to Rulok, where he bypassed any attempt at negotiation and simply confronted and executed the regional ruler, the Marquis of Qualis, Gavel Vidarcia.
Slaying the Marquis is a strong military statement, definitely. But what Gair does next is the ultimate strategic cold calculation. It's the moment that, for me, defines him as a political animal, not just a commander.
Absolutely. Gavel's wife was Isoldice. Gair met her, dismissed her, quoting the source with the words, "too old." Just like that.
Oh.
He immediately married her young daughter, Raquerle Garcia, who was but 10 years of age.
10 years old. You just can't overstate how significant that dynastic calculation was. Why was marrying Raquerle, who had no personal power, more valuable than marrying, say, a warlord's powerful widow or sister?
It's all about legitimacy in the long term. Raquerle was the granddaughter of Roicher's nephew. By marrying her, Gair was attempting to merge his raw military power with the last thin thread of imperial legality. He wasn't marrying for love or even immediate alliance. He was ensuring that any offspring he had with Raquerle would have legitimate dynastic claim to all of Lior, neutralizing every other pretender's right to the throne.
And this political union was enacted with ruthless swiftness right after a major personal trauma, the assassination of his first wife, Lady Mousy, on Silas. He's securing a kingdom and avenging his wife simultaneously. Talk about multitasking.
He's a man of immediate action. He declares himself Lord of Silas and Qualis. He established his capital in Liasil, but immediately renamed it Malcian in honor of the slain Malcy, linking his political future to his personal loss. He invested heavily, building mighty stone walls and a rounded harbor to safeguard the fleet that put him on the map. He's building a foundational kingdom, seriously building it up.
But he wasn't alone in this sudden burst of kingdom-building ambition. Who was his main, most bizarre rival in this nascent West Lior?
That brings us to Roy Sedain. Roy had seized the region of Roby and, like Gair, sought to restore a version of the past, specifically the ancient Alaci Empire from his stronghold Palua. But his methodology was truly revolutionary, perhaps, maybe born of military desperation.
You're talking about the detail that truly sets this period apart, Roy's attempt to create a literally magical army.
Yes. Golems, The chronicle confirms that Roy was constructing a massive lyceum of the arcane arts of thaumaturgy, dedicated solely to creating golem soldiers forged of metal and clay. This wasn't just a rumor. This was a state-sponsored effort to revolutionize warfare by fielding an army of magically animated, tireless constructs.
Golems. What does that tell us about the nature of this power struggle? Was Roy that short on manpower, or was this considered genuinely revolutionary military technology that Gair and the Daconians should have, feared?
Well, I think it reveals two things. First, the human cost of the post-imperial wars must have been staggering if a powerful warlord felt the need to replace living soldiers with golems.
Good point.
Second, it shows the incredible decentralized access to powerful, unpredictable resources, magic in this case, that defined the fractured lands. Gair and Roland were relying on traditional military organization, but Roy was banking on radical technology. Very different approaches.
And despite this looming magical arms race and their deep underlying animosity, the sources describe them as vipers coiled. They actually feigned friendship, exchanging daughters to wed their sons, just to keep the dynamic balanced while they waited for the best moment to strike.
That necessary distraction is exactly what bought the Daconians the opportunity they needed. In 476 H.K.C., with Gair preoccupied dealing with the eastern remnants, the Daconian army crossed the Daconia River, kicking off the Qualian War.
Right, the Qualian War begins. The Daconian army was led by Duke Valcaire Vishambarise and Duke Alvair III Dwarzin. Our sources point out their naval weakness. Only 60 galleys and 3 barges left, a fraction of their former power. But what they lacked in naval might, they gained in local support, which is often crucial in these kinds of wars.
Precisely. The Ulinari people of Qualis absolutely detested the Liori occupation forces, who had imposed heavy taxes and enforced crushing serfdom since Gair took over. The locals greeted the Daconians as liberators. This local rebellion forced the Liori troops to quickly withdraw to the strategic town of Rulok, expelling the civilians and fortifying their positions.
Rulok became the anchor point of the Liori defense. But the true star emerging on the Daconian side is a young man who sounds like an absolute force of nature. Roland Tauphyn.
Roland, only 20 years old, but already of towering stature, with descriptions that sound almost mythological, thighs like the trunks of trees. He embodies intensity, and that intensity is rooted in a truly traumatic childhood.
Let's pause on this upbringing because it seems central to understanding his character. His father was slain back in 455 H.K.C. by the Duchess of Opheria, Davis Raquerle, scattering his house. His mother, Safraise Perede, raised him under Valcair's wardship in Melicel. What was her primary focus?
Vengeance. Singular and absolute vengeance. The sources tell us she literally forbade the play of childhood. This wasn't normal parental discipline. This was psychological engineering.
Yeah.
Roland was thrust into martial training from the tender age of 2.
2?
2 years old. And every single night, she didn't read him stories. She whispered tales of betrayal, how the Raquerles had stolen their ancestral home, the great castle of Echequa.
Wow. 2 years old. This is a child raised solely to be a weapon of vengeance, trained years earlier than any of his peers. What role did Duke Valcaire play in tempering this raw, vengeful energy? Did he try?
Valcaire was an essential counterbalance. He felt a historical guilt over the dynastic mess that led to the collapse of the Tauphyn house. Safraise focused only on family honor, but Valcaire ensured Roland received superior training in everything: siegecraft, logistics, tactics, strategy, and history. Roland was participating in full military exercises starting at age 9, while the standard was usually 11 or 12. He was trained, conceptually, to be more than just a vengeful killer. He was trained to be a supreme military mind.
That training was immediately tested. The Daconians laid siege to Rulok, and it proved costly. 500 men fell. Gair forced them to abandon the siege by rapidly advancing his fleet up the Jane River, threatening to cut off the Daconian line of retreat.
That forced retreat is where Roland's strategic genius truly shines. He saw the danger and devised an aggressive plan. He urged Valcaire to first raise a stone bridge which would block Gair's advance and flood the surrounding fields, slowing the Liori forces.
Smart. But the truly breathtaking part of his strategy was the follow-up, the political masterstroke. He wanted to strike Gair's capital, Lyacil, and capture the young Raquerle.
Yes, the 10-year-old child bride. Roland recognized that she was Gair's Achilles' heel. He argued that since her future offspring held the most legitimate claim to all of Lior, capturing her would give the Daconians absolute political leverage, a prize Gair would not risk losing. It was the strategically superior move, targeting the weakness in Gair's political ambition rather than his military strength.
But Valcaire, the cautious mentor, rejected it. Why did he refuse Roland's plan to use Raquerle as a political pawn? Was it a lack of ruthlessness, or maybe a question of resources?
It was likely a combination of caution and the immediate military danger. Valcaire was forced into a difficult winter campaign, shadowing the Liori along the Jane River, where Cair had fortified the three crossings. He was concerned about maintaining his current army and logistics, not launching a risky deep strike that could end the war, but also risk annihilation. You know.
Got it. So Roland's risky but strategically sound plan was shelved. They were forced to cross the Jane, which was heavily fortified. Describe the position Cair had established.
These were not weak posts. Cair commanded 9,000 pikemen and crossbowmen, supported by 1,000 heavy black knights and light catapults, all positioned to slaughter any crossing attempt. Crossing was basically suicide, and the Daconian forces were trapped.
This is the moment for Roland's second, equally brilliant tactical plan, the Jane River ruse. How did a force of knights manage to outwit Cair's entrenched thousands?
It was pure deception, exploiting terrain and time. Roland led the Bethryce detachment to the easternmost crossing near Lake Janon. They couldn't actually cross there, but he feigned a relentless, large-scale assault. His knights rode in continuous circles, supported by archers providing maximum noise and visible fire, creating the perfect illusion of a serious, aggressive advance in the rugged terrain.
That's fascinating. They didn't have to win the battle there. They just had to convince Cair that the main force was attacking there. Like a feint, but a very elaborate one.
Exactly. And the Liori reserves bought the deception hook, line, and sinker. They shifted east to counter the perceived threat. This diversion allowed Valcaire and the bulk of the Daconian army to cross the westernmost ford with minimal resistance. They still lost 600 men, but the main army was saved thanks entirely to Roland's ingenuity.
It was the saving move of the campaign. Roland was immediately hailed as a hero and given command of the entire Bethrycean cavalry. Big promotion. But while the Daconians escaped disaster, what was happening with Cair's other major rival, the golem maker Royer?
Royer. Cair had moved east to deal with him, as Roy was besieging Ayr. But Cair didn't even have to finish the job himself. Roy was defeated and slain at Plethcali by other rival warlords, Celis and Belcair Vacruith.
Really? So they took him out?
Yeah. So one huge problem for Cair, the magic robot army threat, was solved by proxy, freeing him up to return his full attention to the Daconians in the west.
And he came back hard. Cair launched a serious diversionary attack through Daconia itself, burning Raquerle and laying siege to Nimhryce.
But again, Roland's speed proved decisive. Roland swiftly responded from Bethryce, capturing the Ilvaldi mercenary forces commanded by Captain Nar and brilliantly dividing them from their ships. He didn't have to defeat the whole army. He just destabilized Cair's immediate forces and logistics, forcing Cair to pay attention and slow his advance. Very clever.
It felt like the stage was set for the final bloody confrontation on the Jane. But as is so often the case in history, the war ended not because of one general's victory, but because an external existential threat made the entire conflict, well, irrelevant.
That's the critical pivot. A message arrived from Daconia's queen Nimhryce, instructing Valcaire to immediately seek a ceasefire. The reason?
The trolls.
The trolls.
Right.
The trolls had invaded Lower Threum with 2 large hosts and had already defeated a Daconian army. All the political gains and tactical maneuvers of the Qualian War instantly took a backseat to the survival of the realm.
And yet, even faced with a royal order and national crisis, we see Roland's defining characteristic one last time. Driven by his singular desire for glory and vengeance, he refused to follow the ceasefire order. He launched a surprise attack on the Liori army's rear.
He just attacked anyway. Wow. That insubordination forced Cair into a heavy, unintended battle with Valcaire's main force. The Liori suffered such significant losses that Cair was compelled to retreat across the Jane, giving the Daconians a vital victory they hadn't strategically planned for.
And that forced retreat, combined with Cair's own rapidly deteriorating internal situation. Remember, his own nephew, Danain of Roby, had betrayed him and was besieging the fortress of Valley.
Right. Internal problems, too. Exactly. All that compelled Cair to agree to the ceasefire. The war concluded with Western Qualis left under Daconian control, secured largely by Roland's brilliance and his disobedience. Valcaire was finally free to shift his focus to the trolls in Lower Threum.
So if we look back at this post-imperial era, what stands out most about the nature of power back in 473 H.K.C.? What's the takeaway?
The key insight from these sources, I think, is that during a period of massive political dissolution, Individual genius and personal ruthlessness can reshape history faster than large armies or established regimes. You have Gair's cold, calculated political marriage to secure dynastic legitimacy, contrasted with Roland's highly innovative, aggressive tactics, born from a childhood dedicated solely to vengeance. These personal forces drove the geopolitical shift far more than any remaining institution.
It's compelling to see how rapidly these events unfolded, from a unified empire to golems, forced child marriages, and brilliant river ruses, all within 3 short years. Just incredible change.
Exactly. And let's end where we began, with that moment of strategic difference. Roland the Tauphyn, the 20-year-old tactical genius, initially argued to seize the 10-year-old Raquerle to gain political leverage over all of Lior. Valkyria rejected that move as too risky. Given that the Quilian War ultimately ended inconclusively due to the external troll threat, what political and dynastic future for Lior might have unfolded if Duke Valkyr had embraced Roland's riskier, more ruthless strategy and successfully captured that key political pawn? That's something for you to consider.
In the shadowed halls of Nimhryce, where banners once flew high, there lived a boy, a noble son, beneath a troubled sky. His mother, fierce as northern winds, with sorrow in her heart, spoke words of vengeance cold and sharp, to shape him from the start. They took from us our castle grand, on Feelin's quiet shore. They stole the blackened fortress where our kin had ruled before. But not even that could they abide, so false their hearts and cruel. They placed a feeble toad on high, and played us all for fools. Oh, Roland the Tauphyn, son of honor, child of flame, from the ashes of betrayal, you rose to earn your name. At the crossing of the Jane, where the rivers meet the sky, you led your knights to victory with courage fierce and high. His father slain by treachery, his house reduced to dust. Yet in his veins the fire burned, a blade forged sharp and just. He trained with sword from tender years, his mother's words a guide. And when the time for battle came, he faced it without pride. The ambush brave Gair, your father true and bold. A harlot led him to his doom, her heart as dark as coal. So grow, my son, in strength and might, let justice be your goal. And one day you'll reclaim what's lost, restore our shattered soul. Oh, Roland the Tauphyn, son of honor, child of flame, from the ashes of betrayal, you rose to earn your name. At the crossing of the Jane, where the rivers meet the sky, you led your knights to victory with courage fierce and high. The lorry lords held fast their ground, with catapults and stone, but Roland rode with cunning to claim what was his own. He feigned the charge, he drew them near to where the true path lay, and with a mighty force behind, Valkyr won the day. Now songs are sung in taverns far of Roland's cunning mind, of how he turned the tide of war and left the foe behind. But in his heart the fire still burns, a yearning yet unmet, to claim his birthright full and true, his father's sword beset. Remember this, my dearest one, the night is cold and long, but dawn shall break and you will rise, as fierce as you are strong. So close your eyes, my only son, and dream of battles won, for one day you will stand as king beneath the rising sun. Son of honor, child of flame, from the ashes of betrayal, you rose to earn your name. At the crossing of the Jane, where the rivers meet the sky, you led your knights to victory with courage fierce and high. where many others fail. In the songs of bards and history's rage, his deed shall never fade. The orphan son who rose to fight and all his foes to slay.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into the sources for 478 of the High King's calendar. And the story we found, well, it's not just about war. It's about how a successful defense almost tore a nation apart politically.
It really was a year where Daconia faced this incredible squeeze. You've got devastating military losses, enemies showing real tactical innovation, and then deep political chaos right at the top.
Exactly.
It's a fascinating look at asymmetrical threats and internal fractures. Our mission today is really to walk you through how Daconia navigated these two massive simultaneous problems. On one hand, you have this incredibly cunning troll war chief, Naf, who just completely changed the game down south.
Right.
And then at the same time, you've got Gair IV ramping up aggression again from West Lior. A perfect storm, really.
Okay, let's start with Naf, the Troll War. Because that invasion of Lower Threum, wow, it turned into a strategic nightmare almost immediately, didn't it?
It did. Daconia was used to troll hordes, sure, but Naf was something else entirely. He wasn't just leading raids, he was thinking tactically.
He had that mercenary background, didn't he? Working for Raquerle Lucer.
Precisely. He wasn't some brute leading from the front blindly. The sources really emphasize his cunning, his tactical mind. That mercenary experience gave him insight into Daconian methods.
Insight he used to turn their strengths against them.
Exactly. He knew their doctrine.
And he achieved this brutal efficiency with tactics that must have been shocking at the time. Can we unpack those a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, the use of human thralls, basically enslaved locals pushed onto the front lines as shield bearers.
Just sheer expendable mass to absorb the initial Daconian charge.
Right. It let the actual troll warriors save their strengths for the breakthrough. But maybe even more strategically damning was his use of conscripted halflings.
That's the detail that really stands out, using them as guides for infiltration, for flanking.
It shows Nal understood the terrain, understood the value of local intelligence, and crucially, he used non-troll manpower in ways the Daconians just didn't anticipate. They expected a head-on fight.
They were still playing by the old rules, the ones Gair IV had perfected. Strong center, disciplined formations.
And Naf knew it. He studied those tactics and developed specific counters. Which brings us to the Battle of Lake Eith.
The big disaster.
Oh, absolutely. He didn't just beat the Daconian army there, he crushed it. He proved, almost overnight, that their established military thinking was vulnerable, obsolete even, against his methods.
And the leadership loss was immediate. Alver III Dwerzin, Duke of Voltai, Marquis of Lower Threum.
Slain, leading a desperate cavalry charge, trying to pull something back from the brink, south of the lake. The 10th day of the 8th month, the sources say. A huge blow.
So chaos. The army remnants fall back to Castle Kyla.
Yes, and they're relying on minimal but critical support from local fishermen just to stay supplied. It's that desperate.
And into this vacuum steps Roland Tauphyn, appointed as the new Marquis to somehow hold this collapsing front.
A massive task. He didn't have much time, but he used the winter effectively, gathering veterans, focusing on his own Tauphyn kin.
The ones connected to the Uliniars through marriage, right? Building a core he could trust.
Exactly, which sets up his counter-strategy. If Naf showed adaptive genius, Roland showed, well, desperate innovation was needed.
He knew the old ways wouldn't cut it. Not against Naf.
No chance.
So let's talk about that training at Nimhryce. It's unusual.
Right.
He brings in Liori-style warfare training. Okay, that makes some sense, maybe flexibility. But the really bizarre detail the sources highlight is drilling his officers in maneuvering by teaching them to dance. Seriously.
It sounds absolutely wild, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But think about it. Liori style emphasizes fluid movement,
Yeah.
reaction. Naf was winning with flanking and infiltration.
So dancing improves.
I think
Balance, agility, faster reactions under pressure.
That seems to be the idea. It wasn't just about formations. It was about training adaptable minds, forcing officers to think and move differently, more fluidly. Pretty radical for the Daconian military structure.
Okay, so after this, unique preparation, Roland moves north. But he has to ally with Duchess Divas v. Raquerle.
The very woman noted as the slayer of his own father. Talk about high-stakes cooperation. The tension there must have been immense.
Yeah, you can imagine. And that tension hangs over the Battle of Moldavor. Roland knows the trolls will try to swarm and encircle.
So his plan. It's brilliant, but incredibly risky. He takes his 9,000 men and divides them into 3 large squares.
With wide gaps between them. That sounds like suicide, an open invitation.
It looks like it.
Yeah.
But the key was what the trolls hit when they surged into those gaps. It wasn't panicked defenders.
What was it?
Discipline. Highly specific formations, tight columns of spearmen, shielded by swordsmen right beside them, and crucially, backed by long pike bearers to keep the trolls at bay, even from the inside.
Ah, so they slide into the gap expecting to flank and roll up the line, but instead hit a solid, bristling wall designed to hold from within the gap.
Exactly. The trolls were confounded. They couldn't break those tight prepared formations inside the gaps. It completely disrupted their usual tactics.
A tactical masterstroke. It breaks Noth's momentum. But the cost...
Staggering. 3,000 men killed. A third of his army gone in one battle.
And then there's that horrifying detail. The trolls pausing their pursuit to feast on the fallen.
Yeah, it's gruesome, but it highlights the sheer brutality they were facing. And ironically, it gave the Daconians the breathing room they needed to actually withdraw in some order.
But that victory, however costly, immediately sowed the seeds of internal conflict. Roland looks at his losses, especially among his Tauphyn kin.
And he's immediately suspicious of Dives Raquerle. He believes she deliberately held back her part of the assault.
Let his lines take the brunt of it, thin out the Tauphyn's strength.
Precisely. So Maldevar isn't just a physical victory, it's the start of a deep political wound.
Yeah.
Which leads us straight to the next crisis, the death of Raquerle.
Right, the old marshal. He was injured at Maldevar.
Yeah, struck by a boulder, thrown from his horse. Didn't kill him outright, but the sources say the injury, combined with his age late 60s, weakened him. He succumbed to pneumonia as winter set in.
So his seat at Melisel passes to his son, Arthair. Okay, standard succession. But the real problem is the marshalship.
Suddenly, Daconia has no supreme military commander. Right after this incredibly bloody war, with suspicion rife among the top nobles.
Queen Nimhryce needs to appoint someone, fast. But the court politics.
It explodes.
Yeah.
The queen's considering Roland the hero of Maldevar, but controversial and maybe needed in the south. Or Perede Vassiliere. Or even her uncle, Arthair.
But then Dives Raquerle, as Chancellor of the Realm, steps in. The woman Roland suspects.
And she has immense influence. She argues against Roland, saying he's indispensable in Lower Threum, holding the line against any recovering trolls.
A convenient argument, perhaps.
Very convenient. Instead, she proposes Robrecht Dorazin. You can see the power play here is less about military need and more about blocking Roland and the Tauphyn influence.
All this infighting. And meanwhile, the other big threat hasn't gone away.
Not at all. While Daconia is tied up with the trolls and then this political paralysis, Cair in the west has been watching and waiting.
He controls West Lior. He secured his eastern flank.
And now he turns his full attention back to Daconia. Late summer 478 H.K.C., he launches a major two-pronged assault into Qualis.
And Daconia, still reeling from Maldevar, just can't hold the line.
They can't. They're forced into a significant retreat back westward across the Gair River. The Lyris pursue. They even occupy several castles east of Melusi.
That's serious. Losing border castles, falling back that far.
It's a major strategic setback. And the immediate danger, as the sources leave things at the end of 478, is critical. Cair's forces have crossed the Lifer River.
Threatening everything south of the River Vale, basically menacing the Daconian heartland.
Yes, so 478 H.K.C. ends with Daconia facing this three-headed crisis. You've got the aftermath of Noth's innovative war in the south, the manpower losses, the tactical lessons learned too late.
You've got the political fallout from Maldevar, the suspicion, the power struggle over the marshalship.
And now you have Cair exploiting all that chaos with a major invasion from the west. It's a nation under immense pressure.
They win a battle, lose their commander, and immediately turn on each other while another enemy pours across the border. Devastating.
It really sets up a crucial question, something for you, the listener, to think about. When Queen Nimhryce is faced with this power struggle, when she feels she has to threaten appointing her uncle, Arthair, or Perede Vassiliere, maybe less qualified candidates, just to counter her chancellor's pick.
Yeah.
What does that tell us about the crown's priorities? In this moment of extreme military danger with Cair advancing, is the ultimate goal dynastic stability and controlling internal power factions, even if it potentially means not having the absolute best military leader in charge.
That's the real tension, isn't it? Military reality versus political survival. And 478 H.K.C. leaves Daconia balanced precariously right on that knife edge.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling a story about, well, collapse, really. The rapid slide into lawlessness in the city of Chrysalis.
Right, specifically focusing on how official corruption, institutional corruption, was basically hidden behind royal luxury and personal scandal.
We're zeroing in on a pretty dark couple of years, 473 to 475 of the High King's calendar.
Yeah, this wasn't just, things getting a bit lax. This was Queen Nimhryce and her lover, Perede, actively taking apart the systems of justice. And free speech, too.
So our mission here is to sort of unpack how all these things, religious rules, the Queen's personal life, and this systematic corruption, how they all came together to effectively silence ordinary people.
And we've got some interesting sources to work with: court chronicles, histories from the Watchmen themselves, and the biography of this really infamous bard.
Okay, so before we get into the scandal, maybe set the scene. The religious backdrop feels pretty important here.
Absolutely crucial. So the Tarsi traditions, they divide society into four main castes. But for this story, the one you really need to know about is the Ventinari.
Ah, the Ventinari. They're the ones considered to have the purest souls, is that right?
Exactly. Purity is their whole thing. But it comes with a lot of restrictions. No meat, no alcohol, they can't own property, can't get involved in trade.
Okay, sounds restrictive. But what gives them political clout?
Well, the big thing is that all the priestesses of the Tarosi hierarchy, basically the spiritual core of the kingdom, they have to be Ventinari.
Got it. So they hold immense moral authority.
Immense. Absolute, really. Which is why Queen Nimhryce's actions were such a big deal.
Because when she started loosening up laws around morality,
She wasn't just tweaking rules. She was, in their eyes, directly challenging them. The Ventinari were suspicious of her from the start. They felt she was too focused on the pleasures of the flesh, as the chronicles put it.
more worldly than spiritual.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Even before Perede arrived on the scene, she'd already relaxed laws against wine, gambling, things that had been banned since Albric the Beloved's time.
So she'd already created this sort of tension between the crown and the temple.
Definitely. It set the stage, you could say.
And onto that stage, in 473 H.K.C., walks a key figure.
Perede Vislier. He gets appointed titular baron and, the really key part, High Commander of the Watchmen of Chrysalis.
And the timing is significant.
Very. This happened right after a decree came down reducing the wages for the city guards.
That seems counterintuitive. Why cut the pay of the people meant to keep order? Well, especially if the queen wants, pleasures in a stable city.
Well, the sources debate whether it was wisdom or folly, but the effect was clear. Perede, described as a man of cunning and little virtue, saw his chance. Underpaid guards are suggestible guards.
So the state basically creates desperate guards, and Perede swoops in. How did he systematize the corruption? What was the method?
It was quite calculated. He didn't just look the other way. He actively encouraged his men to shake down artisans and merchants for protection money.
Protection from what? From crime the watch should be stopping anyway.
Exactly. Or maybe protection from the watch itself. And of course, taking bribes from actual criminals was greenlit too.
Now, previous commanders, under rulers like Gair the Pious, they cracked down hard on this stuff, right? The watch histories are pretty clear on that.
Oh, yeah. Swift, harsh punishment was the norm. Perede flipped that completely. He made corruption the standard operating procedure.
How do you enforce corruption?
If any guard reported wrongdoing, they were punished, replaced. He rooted out the honest ones. Then he went to the district officers, the captains, and basically threatened them.
Threatened them how?
He demanded they kick back half of all the bribes they collected, directly to him.
Half. Why? So he wasn't just skimming. He turned the entire watch into, like, his private racket.
Pretty much. A predictable revenue stream.
Yeah.
And the queen. Well, her own behavior provided the perfect cover.
The scandal of their relationship, you must.
It was incredibly public. He lived with her openly, like they were married, shared everything, bed, baths, meals, all while his actual wife was still alive back in Roby.
Which is a huge sin against the Tarosi marriage bond. The Ventinari must have been absolutely furious.
You'd think so, but Nimhryce just brushed off any criticism, said her private life was her own business.
But it wasn't just private, was it? She started flaunting him in official settings.
Yes, that's when it really crossed a line for many. She declared him her chief bodyguard, started bringing him to state receptions, dressed in fine silks, wearing a ceremonial dwarven dagger.
Meeting foreign princes, like the Gwenandoran and Leori delegations, with him at her side.
Exactly. Imagine the signal that sent. This adulterous, corrupt commander presented as her right-hand man.
That dagger. It's like she's saying his power, however ill-gotten, is her power. Don't question it.
And things escalated. As the corruption took hold, resistance inevitably popped up. Mysterious fires started breaking out in city warehouses.
Presumably targeting merchants who wouldn't pay up, or maybe people who were talking too much.
That's the implication, and Pedane realized the normal legal system, even weakened, could still be a problem for him.
You mean the laws requiring a fair trial? The ones going back to Paisfell and Loiran, restored by Ion and the Unifier? Those foundational principles.
Those exact ones, he couldn't risk them. So the Watch histories say he just bypassed them.
How?
Murder. Cold-blooded murder became his tool to silence opponents. No trials, no witnesses, just elimination.
So the decay is complete. State-sanctioned corruption, backed by state-sanctioned murder, all happening under the cover of the Queen's personal scandals.
Yeah. It paints a grim picture. The official channels for justice were gone.
So in that kind of environment, who dares to speak out? This must be where the Bard comes in. Raisman.
Raisna, yeah. Known as the Bard of the Sewage Rats. He was the ultimate outsider. A Nemestro Bard fatherless. That alone marked him in society.
And he played for the common folk.
Exclusively. In the city's, 160 humble taverns and marketplaces, not the fancy places.
And he leaned into his background, didn't he?
Yeah.
Claiming he could be the son of a murderer or a king.
Right. He took that insult, sewage rat bard. Apparently, Queen Regent Bethryce called him that first, and he completely owned it.
Saying the sewage rat is a survivor.
Yeah.
Multiplies more than nobles.
Exactly. He turned the slur into a badge of honor for the downtrodden, a symbol of resilience.
But the sources say he was actually talented, despite being illiterate.
Incredibly talented. A voice of rare beauty, one chronicler notes. His lyrics were apparently so good that the high society court bards, the educated ones, would secretly pay him.
Pay him for verses.
Yeah.
To pass off as their own.
Yep. He was basically a ghostwriter for the very establishment that looked down on him.
But he couldn't perform in their venues.
Oh, no. Banned from the top 13 establishments. His subject matter was just too raw.
What did he sing about?
Not heroes and legends. He sang about drunken nights, prostitutes' lives, basic bodily functions, the affairs and scandals of ordinary artisans, the stuff polite society ignored.
The unvarnished truth of the city's underbelly.
Pretty much. He held up a mirror to the parts no one wanted to see.
We probably should mention his most notorious song from that time, The Skin.
Oh.
Sounds quite something.
It is. It really shows his style. Crude, satirical, but with a political edge. It's about a princess, an ogre, and this knight who's supposed to be the hero.
But he chickens out.
Completely freezes. And the ending, the description is the knight just standing there trembling, and the skin of his lance he'd pull back and forth.
Okay. That's blunt. A commentary on impotence, maybe. Royal impotence in the face of the city's problems.
It certainly reads like a metaphor for inaction, yeah. Very pointed.
But this powerful voice, this symbol of defiance, he wasn't exactly a saint himself, was he? The sources are pretty clear on his flaws.
Not at all. Deeply flawed. Public drunkenness, fits of rage, periods of what sounds like near madness.
And his personal life. The records mention 48 children. And that he neglected almost all of them.
48 known children, yeah. And sadly, nearly 30 died in infancy. It's a shocking number.
And his relationships with women.
Also terrible, physically abusive to his lovers when he got jealous. He even wrote these remorseful songs afterwards, like Punish Sewage Rat and I Broke My Finest Flower.
So the man fighting tyranny was a tyrant at home. That's complex.
It's vital to remember that complexity. He wasn't a simple hero. He was this incredibly talented, incredibly damaged individual who somehow found the courage to speak out.
Which makes what happens next even more significant, perhaps.
Yeah.
It turns his focus.
Yeah, around 475 H.K.C., he finds this new burst of creativity, or maybe just fury, and he starts writing ballads specifically targeting Pedane and the Watch's corruption.
Moving from general social commentary to direct political attack.
Exactly. And the one that really crossed the line was Nimhryce Goes to Crook Valley.
Okay, the title alone is provocative. What was the story in that ballad?
It's absolutely scathing. It basically portrays the queen selling herself in, the roughest part of town just to get enough money to buy Pedane a crown.
Selling herself.
Wow. And then the satirical twist, her first customer turns out to be Pedane himself.
No way.
Yes. And according to the song, they sort of bond over the fact that since they aren't actually married, none of the usual rules apply. They decide to just carry on with public debauchery to raise money for their son Amer's betrothal.
That's not just insulting her character anymore. That's accusing the whole royal line of basically prostituting the kingdom's future for cash.
It's incredibly direct, and apparently it became hugely popular, especially down by the docks with sailors and workers.
And they'd sing it deliberately when the watch was around.
It became a thing, yeah. A very dangerous form of protest, singing Raised Nan's song right in the guards' faces.
Okay, so Perede and the Queen couldn't ignore this. This was direct incitement, in a way.
Yeah.
How did they finally get him?
The arrest itself, it was almost anticlimactic. 13th day, 11th month, 475 H.K.C. 2 guards found him in a tavern, the King's Brook.
Performing. Fighting.
Neither. He was just sitting alone, apparently sobbing into his half-empty jug of Thriumi mead.
So they took him when he was at his lowest point.
Seems that way. And the end came very quickly after that.
The next morning.
His body was found in King's Square, right beneath the royal castle.
And the manner of death sent a clear message.
Oh, absolutely. His throat was cut, his fingers were broken, the fingers he used to play and symbolically to write.
But the most chilling detail.
His lips were sewn shut.
Sewn shut. That's not just murder. That's symbolic annihilation.
It was a declaration. No voice of dissent would be tolerated. Whether it was the Queen, Perede, maybe even a rival who saw an opportunity. We don't know who physically did it.
But it didn't matter who held the knife, did it? The act itself signaled the complete death of law and free speech. This was tyranny, plain and simple.
And it grew directly out of that initial decay. The Queen's focus on her own affairs, her shielding of Perede, it allowed this monster to grow. The Ventinari were worried about wine and gambling.
While Perede was institutionalizing extortion and murder.
Exactly. The smaller moral failings masked the catastrophic collapse of justice.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive really shows how that official lawlessness, Perede's whole system, was protected, almost incubated, by the Queen's very public indiscretions.
And silencing Raised Nan, this flawed, maybe even terrible man, but the voice of the voiceless that became the ultimate symbol that justice was gone, even for someone like him.
The moral rot at the top enabled the institutional rot below to completely take over.
It's a stark lesson.
Which brings us back to the Ventinari. They were suspicious of Nimhryce from the start, worried about her pleasures of the flesh. They focused on the drinking, the gambling, the affair. But maybe they missed the bigger picture.
It certainly seems that way in hindsight.
So here's something for you to think about. Rosnan's most potent weapon was satire about those very pleasures-drunken revelry, scandalous relationships. Yet it was that critique aimed at the powerful that led to his execution. Did the murder of the bard of the sewage rats, the one who sang about the Queen's perceived vices, ironically end up proving the Ventinari's deepest fears about the real cost of moral decay at the very top, even if they were looking at the wrong sins all along?
That's a heavy question. The connection between the personal vice and the political silencing.
Something to ponder. Join us next time for another deep dive.
With a purse full of greed, went down to Crook Valley where shadows do feed, to sell off her virtue or what's left to sell for the crown made of gold and a secret to tell. Oh, sing lad, sing of the Queen and her shame, of the day the dog who's more wolf than a name. They drink and they stumble in alleyways dark, while the rats of Chrysalis laugh at their lark. Now Perede in the night, once noble and true, is licking her hand like a dog at the brew. He once was a guardian, but now he's a slave to a crown made of lies and a mistress to pray. Oh, sing lad, sing of the Queen and her shame, of the day the dog who's more wolf than a name. They drink and they stumble in alleyways dark, while the rats of Chrysalis laugh at their lark. Now Perede in the night, once noble and true, is licking her hand like a dog at the brew. He once was a guardian, but now he's a slave to a crown made of lies and a mistress to pray. Oh, sing lad, sing of the Queen and her shame, of the day the dog who's more wolf than a name. They drink and they stumble in alleyways dark, while the rats of Chrysalis laugh at their lark. They met in the court when she scorned her own mum. Spent every last coin, left the poor woman numb. Perede was the guard of her chamber so cold, but he stole from her heart and then sold maps for gold. Lords and the ladies, they turned a blind eye to a mayor the bastard, with hair black as night sky. But any old rat from the sewers could see that Perede's the sire, though they call him Gair seed. Oh, sing, lads, sing of the queen and her shame, of Perede the dog, who's more wolf than a name. They drink and they stumble in alleyways dark, while the rats of Chrysalis laugh at their lark. Now 10,000 rats lie dead in the streets for the crown that she bought with deceitful receipts. And Perede the cur sits high on his throne, while the blood of the fallen cries out from the stone. Oh, sing, lads, sing of the queen and her shame, of Perede the dog, who's more wolf than a name. They drink and they stumble in alleyways dark, while the rats of Chrysalis laugh at their lark. So raise up your jugs and drink down your mead, but Nimhryce the queen and Perede so they deed. But remember, my friends, as the night turns to dawn, the rats always dance when the tyrant is gone.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're doing a deep dive into a really critical slice of Daconian history. We're talking 476 to 479 H.K.C., High King's calendar.
Yeah, it's this collision point, really. You've got civil power, military command, royal authority, all kind of grinding against each other.
And it gets dramatic. It reshapes things.
Absolutely, because Queen Nimhryce, she's juggling, well, everything. Corruption at home, massive debts, military bungling. And we've got these sources right. They give us two really key narratives.
One's about a political overthrow, almost a revolution from the ground up.
And the other, pure military genius rising from, well, unexpected places, both spinning out from Nimhryce's court.
So our mission today is to see how these forces kind of pulled the crown apart, or maybe in some ways forced it to adapt. But first, we need to get a handle on one specific group. They're central, the Amatininari.
Right. Can't understand the cities without them. They're your burghers, your wealthy merchants, skilled artisans. They run the guilds, control trade, and crucially, they hold serious political weight inside city walls like Chrysalis.
They're the money, essentially, the tax base.
Exactly. And the queen needs them. Badly.
And this isn't happening in isolation, is it? We need the bigger picture. Daconia, Chrysalis. But who's pushing from the outside?
Oh, yeah. Constant pressure. You've got military threats, mainly the Lori, specifically Western Leor. They're the enemy knocking at the gate.
And the money guys.
That's the Dorisans of Voltaire, holding the crown's purse strings, basically. Financial pressure is huge.
Okay, so that financial strain, that's the backdrop for everything.
Pretty much. But let's zoom into Chrysalis itself. 476 H.K.C., the annual mayoral election.
Now, this office, historically, it was respected, right? Civil courts, fire watch, that sort of thing.
Yeah, important local stuff. Artisan education, widow support.
Yeah.
But ceremonial, mostly.
Yeah.
The guilds took turns, kept things fair, orderly.
Until things stopped being orderly?
Precisely. Enter Thales Luiter Dacra.
Ah, yes. Tell us about her wealthy widow, right? Textiles.
That's her. Successful merchant. And she just throws the rule book out the window. Stands up in the assembly, says she's running for mayor.
Which was unheard of.
Completely. First woman ever. Total shock. Shattered protocol.
And she wasn't running on, like, civic pride. She had an angle.
Oh, a very sharp angle.
Yeah.
Corruption. She went straight after the city watch, commanded by this Leori knight, Perede Vasilier.
Okay, Perede. We need to remember that name.
Definitely. Thales is accusing his watch of demanding bribes, oppressing citizens, the whole 9 yards. Sources back this up pretty strongly.
So how does she campaign? This isn't just speeches, is it?
No way. The sources say she had a voice of iron and fire. She went door to door visiting hundreds of artisans personally.
But the really interesting bit, the Nimhryce.
Yes. The street kids, the chimney sweeps, this is brilliant, really. Shows where the power is shifting.
Less so.
She paid them to draw these savage caricatures of Pedane all over the city walls, turning this elite political fight into public street theater. Propaganda, basically.
Wow. Using the lowest rung of society to publicly shame a royal appointee.
Exactly. And it worked. The public reaction was massive. Unprecedented turnout for the election.
And the result?
H.K.C wins, crushes it. 69% of the vote after 3 days.
That's more than an election win. That's a statement, a warning.
You bet. A direct shot at the Queen's authority. And H.K.C doesn't let up.
What's next? 477 H.K.C.
Yep. She immediately petitions Queen Nimhryce. Remove Pedane. She brings testimony, evidence of the Watch's crime.
And the Queen's reaction, predictable.
Textbook Crown response, dismissive, contemptuous even. Basically tells H.K.C, I appoint the military commanders, not you. Royal authority trumps civil petition.
So, standoff, the city's chosen leader versus the Queen's appointed knight. What breaks it?
Violence. H.K.C herself is attacked. Badly beaten by men loyal to the city watch.
Oh, wow. Okay. That escalates things.
Hugely. Riots explode across Chrysalis. The matriarch Natus steps in, condemns the brutality, and crucially the Amatiniari guilds. They form their own militias.
They're basically saying, we can't trust the crown to protect us anymore?
Exactly. The city's infrastructure is pushing back. Chancellor Divis sees the writing on the wall, forces the issue into the public courts.
So Pedane is finally out.
He's removed. Replaced by Fernand V. Honorin, sources say he was a man of integrity. So H.K.C gets her win. A symbol of justice now.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
Always a catch with the crown. The Queen immediately shuts down any further investigation into the Watch. Pedane is out of Chrysalis' command, yes, but he's still protected, not punished.
So H.K.C wins the battle in the city, but Pedane escapes real consequence. Why would the Queen protect him after all that?
That's the million gold coin question, isn't it? Maybe favoritism, maybe she genuinely thought he was competent elsewhere, or maybe she just needed a win, any win. And she thought Pedane could deliver it on the battlefield.
Which leads us right into the military side of things.
Perfect transition. Because while all this is happening, the crown is drowning in debt. Remember the Amatiniari and the Dorisans?
Right. Owed money everywhere, affecting defenses.
Big time. The walls of Chrysalis are literally crumbling. The Queen is desperate for cash, desperate for a victory to shore up her authority.
And this desperation leads to appointing Pedane.
Unbelievably, yes. She appoints Pedane, the guy just run out of Chrysalis, to lead the army for the third liberation of Qualis.
Despite opposition, I thought people warned her.
Serious opposition. Her own uncle, Arthaire, the respected Chamboise, both pointed out the obvious. Pedane had zero command experience in actual war. None.
And what happens to Arthaire? He's experienced, right?
He gets recalled to oversee the wall reconstruction in Chrysalis.
Wait, so she pulls her veteran general off the front line to supervise construction?
And gives command of 4,000 men to her disgraced, inexperienced favorite.
Was that just sheer indulgence? Or trying to get Pedane out of the city, maybe give him a chance to redeem himself far away?
Hard to say for sure. Maybe a bit of both. But the result, catastrophic. Pedane's arrogance goes off the charts immediately.
How so?
Sending these boastful letters back to the Queen, even lewd ones. There's one source mentioning a letter where he talks about wanting to breach the Queen's walls after taking Qualis.
Okay. That tells you a lot about his mindset.
Right. Conquest as personal, even sexual glory, not strategy. And his actual strategy, just as bad.
What did he do?
Attacking Rulak, he takes the northwest side. The most fortified part, surrounded by a deep moat. His own commanders are like, what is he doing?
Basic tactical error.
Huge error. Then he plans a siege, but forgets. Well, he forgets the basics, like blocking the mouth of the Jane River, vital for cutting off supplies or escape.
His commanders had to fix that.
Yeah, they scrambled to correct it. Shows he just didn't grasp fundamental siege warfare.
And the enemy, they weren't making those mistakes, I assume.
Not at all. Autumn 478 H.K.C. Kervet Toisila of Western Lior catches Pedane's second army completely by surprise.
And Pedane's reaction.
Panic. Orders a retreat. But it's chaos. And in that chaos, he forgets about the cavalry.
Forgets? How do you forget 500 cavalry?
He neglects to inform the 500 horsemen stationed down by the Jane River about the retreat order. Just leaves them hanging.
Oh no, so what happened to them?
It was a slaughter. Of those 500 elite cavalry, only 60 made it back to Daconia.
Devastating, irreversible loss.
Absolutely. And Queen Nimhryce, who apparently was planning to make him Duke of Qualis.
She cuts him loose fast, I bet.
Instantly. Distances herself completely. bars him from the castle, shoves him into obscurity with a tiny pension, 400 gold coins. His very public failure kind of saved her the political headache of dealing with him, but the military damage was done. The realm was exposed.
So incompetence fails spectacularly. Arrogance gets its comeuppance. The crown looks weak. This is where the story needs a hero.
And it gets one. Enter Roland von Tauphyn, master strategist, the anti-Pedane.
His path to success sounds completely different.
Night and day. Pedane relied on court favor. Roland relied on, well, brains and ingenuity.
Yeah.
And some very unlikely alliances.
The Ildvaldi mercenaries, that's the really fascinating part.
Isn't it 300 captured Ildvaldi warriors from Volcaroth up north, led by this guy, Gnar Hongersun?
And their culture is key here. The sources mention their views on death.
Right. Gnar, when captured, isn't pleading. He's concerned about the dignity of his death. Their gods, he says, honor glorious death in battle. Roland hears this and thinks, I can use that. He sees their code as a military asset.
How? What specific skills did they bring?
Two main things. One, they're expert troll fighters. For them, fighting those huge monsters in Daconia, that is glorious battle, like back home. It's an honor.
Okay, specialized monster hunters. What else?
Gnar himself was a master boat builder. The sources describe his ships slender, swift, almost like ancient elvish designs. Very high quality.
So Roland sees these specific, unique skills, troll fighting, boat building, a warrior code, and thinks, Silas Island?
Exactly. Silas Island, Keeliori stronghold. Spring 470 H.K.C. Roland gets his Ildvaldi allies to build 50 rowing boats. Disguised.
As fishing boats.
Yep. Each carrying 20 men. A mix of Daconians and Ildvaldi. Stealth approach.
So how do they get in? Infiltration.
Pure guile. They set up a hidden base in a cave on the island. His soldiers wear captured Liori black chainmail.
That worked. Wouldn't they be noticed?
Apparently, the Liori rotated their garrison frequently, so new faces in standard armor didn't immediately raise alarms. Clever planning by Roland.
So they're inside the perimeter, but they don't just attack.
No frontal assault. They use mischief and misdirection. They do little things, like stealing blankets from the laundry.
Weird. Why?
While simultaneously smuggling flammable materials down into the castle cellars. Then the masterstroke. Lamp oil. Bonfire. Huge amounts of thick, black smoke start pouring out of the cellars.
Ah, the smoke trick, making it look like a massive, uncontrollable fire.
Exactly. The Liori commander sees the smoke, panics, thinks the whole place is going up, maybe expects an attack is coming right behind it, orders a full evacuation.
And Roland's troops.
They just walk in. 400 men take Silas Castle without a major fight. Pure deception.
Incredible. What happens next?
They immediately turn the castle's own catapults on the Liori fleet in the harbor, sink nearly 100 galleys. The remaining Liori troops on the island, cut off, no supplies, they desert by the first month of 479 H.K.C.
Wow. A victory won by intelligence, not brute force. How did Chrysalis react?
They rejoiced. Finally, some good news. The guilds even helped reinforce the island. Roland becomes a hero overnight, Marquis of the Loethrium.
And he follows this up with the trolls.
Yes, he takes his Ildvaldi allies and goes after the trolls that were plaguing the region, destroys 1,500 of them, plus 3 massive ogres. He cleans up the mess Pedane couldn't handle and secures the borders. So now you have Roland, liberator of Silas, conqueror of trolls. He's done the impossible, rescued the crown from disaster, fulfilled the queen's desperate wish for a victory.
He must have had immense leverage after that.
Unbelievable leverage. And it's not until the 8th month of 479 H.K.C. that he finally gets his audience with Queen Nimhryce. He walks in there knowing he holds all the cards. And the sources say he stands before her with but one request.
Chilling, just one request. So let's pull this together. What does this period tell us about power in Daconia?
Well, we see 2 very different but equally effective ways power actually worked, ways that challenged the queen's direct authority.
First, Talis Luidar Dacra.
Right. She used public anger, organized the Amatiniari, the civil power base, and literally forced the crown to back down over Pedane and Chrysalis. She won politically, even though the queen clearly disliked her.
And then Roland von Tauphyn.
Completely different path.
Yeah.
Military brilliance, using specialized local knowledge, the Ildvaldi, and pure guile. He delivered the military victory the crown desperately needed, precisely where royal favor and incompetence in the form of Pedane had failed.
So the crown, indebted and weakened, needed both. It needed Talis to keep the city stable and the money flowing.
And it needed Roland to actually win the wars. The real power wasn't just flowing from the throne downwards anymore.
The irony is pretty stark, isn't it? Pedane, the queen's favorite, protected by her, fails utterly.
While Talis, opposed by the queen, risking everything, achieves a huge political win that actually helps stabilize things.
It shows that power, during these years anyway, was really in the hands of those who could organize forces effectively, whether that's citizens or soldiers.
Exactly. The throne needed them more than they needed its blessing, perhaps.
Which brings us to that final provocative thought for you, the listener. Roland achieved the impossible. He saved the kingdom, restored the queen's standing, more or less. So what do you think he asked for in that single request? Was it just land, titles, gold, standard rewards?
Or, having seen the crown's weakness and incompetence up close, was he aiming higher? Was he asking for some kind of fundamental knowledge, maybe? Or a political power shift, something that would ensure the crown could never sideline competence for favor again?
What price did the ultimate strategist put on saving the queen? Something to think about.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are
Yeah.
diving into a really high-stakes moment here. You've got military glory colliding, like, head-on with centuries of deep-seated feudal hatred. Our focus is Roland Tauphyn and his big return to Chrysalis in 479 H.K.C. That's the historical king's calendar.
Yeah.
It should have been a triumph, right?
You'd think so. But it immediately flips into this intense political showdown.
Yeah.
It's a classic scenario, really. The crown owes this one guy, like, everything. Roland doesn't just ride in as a hero knight. He's a political grenade lobbed right into the establishment.
And his win was huge, wasn't it? Liberating the river island Silas from West Lior.
Absolutely massive. Economically, it was a game changer.
Because that little island, it controlled the spot where the Threum and Vale rivers meet to form the Uliak.
Exactly. The vital fork. Taking it back instantly restarted all this Daconian trade and fishing that had been, well, choked off for years.
Wow. So money starts flowing again.
Right. And the sudden wealth doesn't just boost Chrysalis, the capital, which is like 2 miles away. It fundamentally shifts the power dynamic. Well, for years, you had these powerful high lords, like the Raquerles, getting richer while the crown was, frankly, struggling. Roland basically refills the queen's coffers overnight.
Ah, okay.
And that gives Queen Nimhryce the political muscle, the leverage she desperately needed to actually challenge those high lords.
Gotcha. So our mission today, then, is to look at how Roland leverages that momentum. The fact the crown is massively indebted to him to go after these big families, reclaim his own house's legacy, which was totally broken, and navigate all the royal intrigue. This isn't just, can I have some land back? It's way bigger. It's a strategic play against this whole entrenched feudal system.
Definitely. And to really get the intensity of that court scene when he arrives, you need the backstory. The root of it all is this incredibly bitter feud between House Tauphyn and House Raquerle.
Okay, lay it out for us.
So back in 456 H.K.C., the Tauphins, they backed Queen Nimhryce's father, Taurian Philippira, for the throne, a risky move.
Right, and it didn't pan out immediately.
No. The High Lords, including the Raquerles, they backed the other side, Gair IV and Bethryce. When Taurian was killed and things settled, the Tauphins got branded as traitors.
Ouch.
Yeah. They were violently kicked out of their ancestral home at Chequa. And guess who benefited most from their downfall?
Let me guess. The Raquerles.
Bingo! They basically picked the Tauphyn carcass clean.
So fast forward to 479 HKC. Roland rides into Chrysalis.
Sure.
The sources paint this picture of him in, like, absolute splendor, gilded chainmail, white horse, fancy red leather saddle.
He looked the part. And the Amatiniari, the common folk, they apparently loved him, adored him.
But the lords...
Oh, they weren't seeing a hero. They saw the ghost of a problem they thought they'd buried decades ago. Uneasy is putting it mildly.
And Roland doesn't waste any time, does he?
Nope. Straight for the throat. He stands up in court, says he's almost 25, but he's got no home, no family. He claims he's no better than the most destitute of the new maestro.
Using the term for the absolute poorest city dwellers. That's quite the statement.
It's totally calculated humility, right? Designed to make the Lord's wealth look obscene in comparison.
Then he turns to Duchess Divis Raquerle.
Yep. Looks right at her, accuses her family, point blank, of tearing his house apart and killing his father.
Oh.
And he twists the knife, contrasting how he can't even remember his father with the queen's own very public grief over her murdered father, Taurian.
Tying his personal vendetta right into the queen's own trauma.
It's clever.
And ruthless.
It's brilliant rhetoric. But
Yeah.
Divis, she doesn't back down easily. She fires back that Roland's father and grandfather were judged fairly. Treason under the old laws of Pays Fel. She even brings up the Tauphyn uprising that damaged Chrysalis. ridiculous.
So using the law to justify what was basically theft and murder.
Pretty much. Standard practice for the powerful.
Yeah.
But Roland's response is just chilling.
What does he say?
He doesn't argue the legal points. He goes straight for the malice. He says, quite coldly, "You took pleasure when you severed my father's head, Duchess Divis."
Whoa. Okay. Was that pure rage, do you think? Or was it still calculated? That feels like a huge risk, saying that in open court.
I think it had to be theater, at least partly. Necessary theater. He needed to shock them, to show he wasn't just asking for scraps. He was demanding justice for a wrong done against the Queen's own chosen line. It basically forced her hand.
Because ignoring him after that would look weak.
Exactly. The tension got so thick, apparently, that Duke Robrek Dorazin, the treasurer, and even the Queen herself had to jump in and shut down the argument.
Okay, so he gets everyone's attention, makes his point symbolically, but the real power play starts when he actually makes his request, right? Just asking for Echekwa back.
Yes. He just asks to be restored to his ancestral castle, Echekwa, by Lake Filion. Simple request. On the surface.
But it blows things wide open.
Instantly. It exposes this deep crack between the crown and the High Lords. Duke Robrek immediately challenges the Queen, questions if she even has the right to carve up Ophiria, which is House Raquerle's ancient territory.
He's basically saying the crown needs the Lord's permission.
That's the implication, that the Queen can't just redraw boundaries without their say-so.
But Nimhryce now has Roland's victory, and the money flowing from Silas backing her up.
Right, so she pushes back, asserts her right to appoint or remove dukes, and Marshal Arthur, a key figure, backs her up, saying, yeah, the Queen's authority is supreme here.
Okay, so the Queen has the momentum, but she still tests Roland.
She does. Maybe she's reluctant to completely alienate the Raqueurs, or maybe she just wants to see how far Roland will push. She offers him the Duchy of Qualis instead.
But there's a catch.
A big one. She tells him he has to conquer it first.
What? After he just won Silas? That's, wow, a massive slap in the face.
You can imagine Roland's reaction. The sources say he just lost it, became genuinely enraged, saw it as totally dismissing his service, demanding another pointless, bloody war.
He actually cursed the court.
Yeah, invoked Ruarok, the Lord of Shadows. Apparently it terrified everyone, even the young Crown Prince Amer, who was just a kid watching all this unfold.
Okay, so Nimhryce clearly miscalculated there.
Badly. She has to backtrack. She offers the Principality of Ride instead, as a softer compromise.
But then something interesting happens with Duchess Divis.
Right. This is where Roland pulls off a masterstroke. Before he can even respond to Raiden, Duchess Divis suddenly gets conciliatory. Maybe she sees the writing on the wall that her family's losing favor fast.
So she tries to cut her losses.
Exactly. She jumps in and offers to grant Echekwa herself, and not just the castle. She offers to release Roland and his line from vassalage to House Raquerle, like, forever. A huge concession.
That sounds like a win for Roland. He gets exactly what he wanted.
It sounds like it, but Roland rejects it.
He rejects it. Why refuse what Divis offered?
This is the genius part. He refuses Divis and demands the grant come directly from the Queen's hand.
Okay, explain the tactic there.
By forcing the Queen to be the one to grant Echekwa, he achieves multiple things at once. One, he makes Nimhryce publicly assert her supreme authority over the High Lords, something she needed to do anyway.
Right, setting a precedent?
Two, he gets his land back, not as a grudging gift from his enemies, but as a formal restoration by the crown. And three, he subtly reminds everyone that his family's loyalty was always to her line, her father's line, not the lords who opposed him.
While simultaneously humiliating the Raquerles by refusing their offer.
Precisely. It's a political checkmate. He secures his land, diminishes his enemies, and strengthens the crown's position all in one move.
That is, wow, calculated victory. So the Queen formally bestows Echekwa on him. He's now Count Tauphyn.
Count Tauphyn. The court drama is done, for now. But Roland clearly knew the fight wasn't over. What's the first thing he does?
Resumes campaigning.
Right.
Against trolls up the Nidra River, mapping new territory for the crown.
Exactly. He's still proving his military value, expanding Daconian influence. He doesn't actually go to Echekwa until the next spring 480 H.K.C.
And even getting there is a hassle.
Yeah, it shows the Raquerles haven't given up the petty needling. They still control the ferries across Lake Filion. So Roland has to take this long, week-long ride around the western shore near Ridney territory just to reach his own castle.
A constant reminder of who's still breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
And when he finally gets there,
Hmm.
what does he find? It's not exactly move-in ready, I take it.
No. Not even close. Echekwa is described as a vast ruin, nearly 50 towers, but the walls are blackened, structures are crumbling. Apparently, the marshy land caused a lot of walls to tumble over the years.
Sounds less like neglect, more like deliberate decay, or worse.
It was worse. This wasn't just time and weather. The Raquerles had actively stripped the place. They took anything valuable, even used the stones from Echekwa's walls to build up their own nearby castle, Lior.
Lior is less than 30 miles away. They're practically neighbors.
Oh, yeah. Close enough to make sure the Tauphins saw what happened to their legacy every day if they ever came back. They wanted to literally erase the Tauphins from the map.
Did anything survive?
Only one thing, really. The weapons in the old Tauphyn smithies. Those blacksmiths were legendary, apparently. But the rest. The Great Hall had trees growing through the floor. Total desolation.
Grim. But then he finds something unexpected.
He does. He stumbles upon a secret, hiding in the cellars. Gorthame Tauphyn, the youngest son of the previous count, along with 7 loyal retainers. They'd been down there for 5 years.
5 years. Hiding in the ruins. How did they survive?
Get this. They lived by trapping and fishing, only coming out at night. But here's the really wild part. They'd secretly taken wives from the local Nimhryce, the lowest class, and raised 25 children in hiding.
25 kids. What was their plan?
A very, very long game. Gorthane's plan was to stay hidden, keep breeding, and in, quote, a few centuries, unleash 10,000 Tauphins to march on Lior and burn it to the ground.
Wow. Patient, hidden, mass revenge. Like a termite infestation building up over generations.
Exactly. A slow, secret restoration aimed at total vengeance down the line. It's a fascinating contrast in philosophy.
Like Roland's not about the long game, is he?
Not at all. He hears this plan and shuts it down immediately. He chooses open action right now. Declares, this is our home again, and now we shall rebuild it. No more hiding.
So he rejects the centuries-long secret vengeance for immediate visible restoration. A bold move.
Very bold.
Yeah.
But it slams him right into the harsh financial reality. Remember how the Raquerles stripped the castle? They did something else too.
What's that?
They'd freed all the serfs tied to Echekwa's land and actually gave them the house's gold and silver savings.
Wait, they gave the money away. Why?
To make sure Roland started with absolutely nothing. No capital and no built-in labor force loyal to him or dependent on him. Pure economic sabotage.
Okay, so he has the castle, but no money and no workers. How does he even begin?
Strategically, in 481 H.K.C., he brings in 500 settlers from Lower Threum, the Lineari people he presumably gained loyalty from during his campaigns.
Okay, settlers. But they need to be paid, fed.
Right, but Roland demands labor, not gold tax. He puts them to work clearing out the ruins, filling corridors with gravel, laying new floors.
That's interesting. Labor instead of cash. Is that significant?
I think so. It's like he's building loyalty through shared effort, not just economic obligation. Rejecting the old feudal model the Raquerles relied on, building from the ground up, literally.
Still, major repairs cost money, especially those smithies he wanted to restore. Where did the actual cash come from?
This is where it gets really tricky politically. He desperately needed capital, so he took a massive loan from Melicel.
Okay. Secured how? Loans like that need collateral.
Secured by a betrothal to Bethryce, who was Marshal Arthur's 13-year-old daughter.
13, wow. And Marshal Arthur, the guy who backed the Queen's authority earlier.
The very same. Roland needed that dowry money badly to get the smithies running again.
But marrying the Marshal's daughter, what did the Queen think of that? I mean, after Roland gave her all that leverage.
Oh, she was not happy. The sources are clear. Queen Nimhryce felt personally betrayed. She had apparently hoped, maybe even planned, to marry Roland herself.
So Roland gets the money, but potentially alienates the Queen, the one person who could protect him. Was that worth the risk?
It was a huge gamble. But think about it, by tying himself to Arthur, arguably the most powerful military figure in the realm besides himself, Roland gained a powerful ally against the Raquerles right next door.
So trading royal favor for a different kind of protection.
Exactly. It probably cemented in Nimhryce's mind that Roland was a political player first, maybe a potential husband second. A tough calculation.
And his focus remains military, doesn't it? Even while rebuilding.
Totally. He brings 50 Tauphyn families specifically to work the forges, hires a famous blade master, Nar of Ildvald. But Roland himself personally drills his men coordinated sword fighting, pike walls, mock battles out on the marshes. He's openly building a private army at Echekwa.
Which can't have gone unnoticed.
No way. He's under constant scrutiny. You've got the nearby town of Echekwa, still run by a council loyal to the Raquerles. He's racking up more debt, this time to the Chambras, for building materials.
And the queen is still watching him.
Closely. She asks him to instruct the young crown prince Amer in martial matters, which sounds like an honor, but it's probably also an attempt to bring him back into the court's orbit, keep tabs on him.
How does Roland respond?
He declines. Says he's too busy with his duties in Lower Threum, and, crucially, at Echekwa. He's signaling his priorities. Rebuilding his house comes first, even before tutoring the heir.
So he's walking this incredibly fine line.
A tightrope, yeah.
So.
He knows he's being watched, not just by the Raquerles next door, but by other powerful lords like the Dwerzins, who never trusted his challenge to their authority in the first place. He won the castle, but he's surrounded by enemies and indebted to his allies, with a displeased queen on the throne.
Okay, so let's synthesize this. By 481 H.K.C., Roland's got Echekwa back. He has his ancestral seat. But the cost is immense. Huge debt. A really unstable political situation with the Raquerles practically breathing down his neck, and a queen who feels personally slighted. That victory at Sealis, it seems like it didn't solve his problems. It just earned him the right to start a much harder, much more dangerous fight, rebuilding his name, his power, his actual home, all while his enemies are just waiting.
Right. And if we connect this back to what he found in the cellars, Gorthane's plan, it throws up a really interesting question, doesn't it?
The slow burn versus the open flame.
Kind of. Gorthane had this vision, centuries of secret growth, culminating in this massive 10,000-strong Tauphyn force emerging to obliterate Lior. Patient, hidden revenge. Roland completely rejected that. He went for immediate, open restoration. High profile, high risk, built on debt and royal displeasure.
So the question is, did Roland's approach actually save House Tauphyn? Or did his push for immediate, glorious restoration just fast-track them towards a conflict that Gorthane's much slower, sneakier strategy might have ultimately won, or at least delayed until they were stronger?
What's the real cost of grabbing glory now versus patiently plotting for overwhelming revenge later? Which path was truly wiser?
A difficult question. Definitely something for you to think about as you process this deep dive.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are really digging into a fascinating set of historical sources from Daconia. They lay out this incredible story of political collapse, the exposure of high treason that had been buried for, nearly 20 years. And it all culminates in the start of the Antler Wars. So our mission today is to unpack those key years, 479 to 484 H.K.C., and figure out how this private drama just spiraled.
It really did spiral. It's almost a perfect storm. You got the last really turbulent years of Queen Nimhryce's reign. The court was, well, let's just say it was toxic. Gossip, debt, and this underlying really bitter rivalry between two major noble houses. You have the Raquerles, ancient political operators, and the Tauphyns, who are this rising military power.
And the hook, the thing that really grabs you about this story, it's not some grand political manifesto or a general's coup. It apparently kicks off because of a 9-year-old prince, Amer, his fear of the dark, and this mysterious little wooden shrine. Sounds unbelievable.
It does, but that's how it unfolds. It's like a chain reaction starting from something deeply personal and ending with, well, the kingdom burning. So maybe let's set the scene first. Around 479 H.K.C., what did Daconia actually look like?
Right, so Nimhryce had been on the throne since the 450s after King Gair III died. But the sources we have, they don't paint a flattering picture. Lavish spending, ignoring real problems like famine and border security, even though the kingdom was apparently broke. So effectively, the real power wasn't even with her. It was this triumvirate, these three lords basically running the show.
Exactly, because the queen was, shall we say, distracted. These three really held the reins. You had Davis via Raquerle, she was Duchess of Opheria, the Chancellor, so head of the civil stuff, law and admin. Then Robric de Raisin, controlling the money, the treasury, critical role. And Arsar de Chambras, commanding the armies in the heartland. And importantly, the Chambras, they supported the queen.
Okay, so you've got the government machine, admin, treasury, military split between these powerful figures. And cutting right through that is this succession question, this rivalry between the Raquerles and the Tauphyn.
Yes, that's the core tension. Representing the Raquerles, you have Raphael de Raquerle. Leafcloak, they called him. He's the son of the older twin sister, Bethryce. And the Raquerles, they're old nobility, claiming like 9,000 years in Opheria. Raquerle himself, he's more of a scholar type, a bit bookish maybe.
Yeah.
His power comes partly through his connection to Dievis, the chancellor. She's his sister-in-law. He's positioned as the steady hand if Prince Amer doesn't make it.
And then the flip side is Roland v. Tauphyn, younger twin son, so Fryce's boy. And he's everything Raquerle isn't, right? War hero, charismatic general, retook his family's lands. And crucially, you mentioned he commanded nearly half the kingdom's military. That's huge. He's the real threat to the Raquerle ambition.
A massive threat. And what really pours gasoline on this fire is the queen's personal life. Nimhryce, even though she was, a dozen years older than Roland, was apparently quite taken with him. The whispers were everywhere. She wanted to marry him, bring his military might under her direct control.
Wow. Okay, that's bold. A power play disguised as romance, maybe. Did Roland go for it?
He was cautious. Roland's main goal, you see, was lineage. He needed a fertile wife to produce a Tauphyn heir. So initially, he kind of kept her at arm's length. The marriage idea only got serious later, around 483. But before that, you see Nimhryce's methods. Roland did get married first to Belle v. Chambois in 482, and that ended tragically, almost immediately.
Wait, his bride died right after the wedding? And that detail about the wedding dress, the one the queen gifted her? The sources are just stating a fact, but the implication feels pretty heavy there.
It's heavy, yeah. The sources are careful. They just report she died after wearing the dress Nimhryce gave her. But given Nimhryce's ambition, her desire for Roland, the court politics, well, everyone drew their own conclusions. It looked like Nimhryce removing an obstacle. Whether true or not, that incident cemented the idea that the queen was ruthless and dangerous. And it just darkens the whole atmosphere leading into the next big event.
Which is where it really unravels, the Night of Blood, 481 H.K.C.
Yes. And this is where Prince Amer, the 9-year-old, gets pulled right into the heart of it all. He was, as you said, afraid of the dark, nyctophobia, a real condition. And his mother, Nimhryce, apparently too busy with court life to really care for him.
So the story goes, he hears a scream, drops his candle, imagine, plunged into pitch blackness, his worst fear, and then armed men burst in. He hides. It's terrifying.
Utterly terrifying. And the aftermath was brutal. Castle lockdown, blood everywhere. The count was, 22 guards, 15 servants, a noblewoman, and her sons. A coordinated attack, clearly meant to take out key people.
But the key detail, the one that twists Amer's fear into something else, is who is behind it. The captured attackers named names Carrie Vitozoli, a warlord, Brene v. Perede, another contender, standard rivals. But the leader of the actual assault team, Nicolaine Villaperi, who just happened to be
the queen's current lover. Exactly. So put yourself in Amer's shoes, hiding in the dark. The logical conclusion, his own mother hired her lover to kill him, or at least clear the way, before he reached 15 and could claim power. That night cemented his paranoia. The biggest threat wasn't shadows. It was his own mother.
Which leads us straight to Raquerle, the scholar, being brought in as Amer's tutor. Dievis and Robrek put him there, didn't they? Not just for lessons, but maybe as a protector, a stable influence.
Precisely. Raquerle was known for his wisdom, his knowledge of herbs, stars, ancient history. He'd studied texts going back to the First Arcanate. He was seen as incorruptible, a counterweight to the queen's court.
And that first meeting, it's quite something. The prince, just 9 or 10, basically asks him point blank, "So how are you planning to kill me for your patrons?" Just lays the paranoia right out there.
Incredible, isn't it? But Raquerle was smart. He didn't dismiss the fear. He met it with, a kind of dry humor. Said he'd only bore him to death with logic and statecraft.
Yeah.
And for 3 years, 481 to 484, he tutored him.
And it wasn't just abstract learning, was it? The sources mention Amer really took to the studies, but specifically how Raquerle used history. Something about the First Arcanate's decline, its corruption, being used to teach statecraft.
Yes, that was brilliant. It gave Amer a framework for understanding the decay he saw around him. It showed him corruption wasn't unique to his time, that rulers had gone mad before. In fact, Amer confided in Raquerle his deepest fear, that Nimhryce would pull an Ennis, the mad queen from the Arcanate era, that she'd declare him illegitimate or insane to make way for a new heir, probably Roland's, if she got her way.
So Raquerle built trust by validating the prince's fears through historical parallels. Smart. But then that trust fractured in 484.
It did. Raquerle, seeing how much the idea of kingship was torturing the boy, asked him something profound. Essentially, do you even want this, knowing the pain it causes you?
And Amer just snapped. The paranoia flared right back up. He accused Raquerle of trying to trick him into giving up the throne, softening him up so the Raquerles would be weak against Roland. He fired him on the spot.
Yeah, It shows just how deep that trauma ran. Even the person he trusted most could suddenly seem like part of the conspiracy.
But that dismissal, it didn't last long. Just days later, a mayor comes back, desperate, in the rain apparently. He's completely convinced Nimhryce is pregnant by Roland now, and the replacement plot is imminent.
And this time, he has something concrete. That small wooden shrine he'd taken from his mother. Inside, ciphered letters. And he also had this book, an old tale of knights, with symbols in the margins that matched the letters. He thought it was the key.
This part reads like a thriller. They rush off to Duvaldi University. Raquerle's wife, H.K.C, she's a linguistics expert.
Yes, and heavily pregnant at the time, which becomes relevant. She confirms the book is the cipher key and starts decoding. And what they found was staggering. 2 huge secrets. First, the treason. From way back in 466 H.K.C.
The details are chilling. Nimhryce, back when she was King Gair V's wife, drew maps of Silas Castle's defenses, including hidden sewer tunnels, from memory, and gave them to her lover at the time, a guard named Perede,
who then sold them to the Leori invaders. That's how Silas fell. It caused immense damage to Daconia. This wasn't just palace intrigue. This was high treason, the kind you execute people for.
But there was more. The second secret, hidden in a final letter from 472 H.K.C, it confirmed a mayor's lifelong fear. Perede, the guard who sold the secrets, was his real father. He was illegitimate.
But I imagine a mayor reading that. Verification of his deepest anxiety. But for Raquerle and Cecilia, it created a huge dilemma. Raquerle wanted to send the treason evidence to the royal council immediately. Stop the queen, save the kingdom. But Cecilia hesitated about the illegitimacy letter.
Why, if it was the truth?
Because of a mayor. She'd seen how cold, how calculating he was. He'd apparently looked at her, pregnant, and immediately saw her unborn child as just another rival claimant to the throne he now knew wasn't rightfully his. Cecilia feared revealing his illegitimacy would just unleash chaos, a free-for-all for the throne. So they decided, reveal the treason, bury the illegitimacy, for stability.
Wow. That decision, treason, yes. Illegitimacy, no, shapes everything that happens next.
So Davis and Robrek plan to arrest Nimhryce late in 484, house arrest at Cresmere. But they deliberately keep Arthur de Chambois out of the loop.
Right. Arthur commanded a key army, but his daughter had married Roland. Though he seemed loyal to Nimhryce herself, too risky. Raquerle smartly changed the arrest date to sidestep any potential spies Arthur might have. The signal was supposed to be subtle, a small fire in the castle pantry.
Supposed to be subtle. But it all went wrong, didn't it? The arrest itself turned into a fight. Loyal guards versus the queen's own faction within the guard, a battle inside the palace, and that subtle fire. People outside saw the smoke rising from the royal castle. The public already hated Nimhryce. They assumed the smoke meant Roland Tauphyn was finally moving against her. So, ordinary citizens formed militias, thinking they were supporting a coup against a traitor queen. Chaos erupted.
Total anarchy in Chrysalis, militias fighting the city watch, guards fighting guards, widespread looting, fires. A quarter of the city burned down, and thousands of citizens died. Just chaos.
Absolute chaos. And Nimhryce, the target of the whole thing. She was watching a play, apparently, a Luar comedy, ironically enough. When the fighting started, she slipped out through a secret passage and fled the city altogether.
So the coup fails, the queen escapes, the city is burning. Eventually, some order is restored by knights loyal to the Tauphyns and Chambois, but Davis, the chancellor, wants to seize the moment, march troops loyal to the Raquerles into the capital.
But Raquerle and Robrek advised against it. They argued, probably correctly, that marching troops in now, even with the queen fled, would look like an illegal power grab by the Raquerles. It would undermine their legitimacy and probably just strengthen Roland's hand. So they held back.
And that caution, that attempt at legitimacy, proved fatal for their cause. Because Roland Tauphyn returns from his war in Qualis in 485, finds the capital in disarray, the queen gone, and he just steps into the power vacuum, claims the capital, ends Nimhryce's reign officially. And that's the start, the beginning of the Antler Wars.
Exactly. It's this tragic convergence, a queen's long-hidden treason, a prince's crippling paranoia. It all blows up. The cipher affair, meant to expose truth and save the realm, ends up triggering the very civil war they feared. And Raquerle's choice, withholding the illegitimacy for stability, it ultimately didn't work. It just cleared the path for Roland versus Raquerle, the staller versus the soldier.
So we end with a kingdom shattered. The revelation of treason was partial, a calculated gamble. You mentioned Raquerle used those ancient texts, the lore of the first Archnate's decay, to help a mayor understand the corruption around him. So Thinking about that, if knowledge truly is power, what happens to a kingdom like Daconia now, where the scholar, Raquerle, holds the damaging truth, the secret of the queen's treason, but the actual military power, the momentum, and maybe even the public's desire for order rests with his rival, the war hero Roland? That's something to really chew on.
In the days of peace and light, when Daconia's banners flew so bright, the high Middle Ages, the time of gold, where friendships bloomed and tales were told. But in the shadows corruption grew, Queen Nimhryce had a darker hue. The great houses vied for the throne, and seeds of treachery were sown. Cries and echoes of cries they sang, bolts through windows, shadows ran, burning buildings, skies aflame. Oh, Chrysalis who bears the blame. Lament for the days now past, the dark ages have returned at last. The Raquerles, with wisdom's grace, plan to bring the queen to face the crimes of treason, dark and deep, as Daconia's honor fell asleep. The Dwarves sins with careful hands sought justice across the land, but the Kembroses, fierce and bold, guarded the queen with hearts of cold. Cries and echoes of cries they sang, bolts through windows, shadows ran, burning buildings, skies aflame. Oh, Chrysalis who bears the blame. Lament for the days now past, the dark ages have returned at last. In Chrysalis, the fire spread wide, as house fought house, with honor denied. The Tauphyn's brave on Quanian shores could not halt the coming wars. Confusion reigned and fear took hold, the burning heaven, the tales foretold. A city once so fair and bright, now torn apart by endless fight. Cries and echoes of cries they sang, bolts through windows, shadows ran, burning buildings, skies aflame. Oh, Chrysalis who bears the blame. Lament for the days now past, the dark ages have returned at last. Era now laid to rest, with the Antler Wars, the land oppressed. The high Middle Ages, a fleeting dream, lost in the blood and the battle scream. Queen Nimhryce in a gilded cage, a symbol now of wrath and rage. Daconia's glory turned to dust, betrayed by power, greed and lust. Cries and echoes of cries they sang, bolts through windows, shadows ran, burning buildings, skies aflame. Oh, Chrysalis who bears the blame. Lament for the days now past, the dark ages have returned at last.